Hello everyone and welcome to yet another behind the scenes video. I just wanted to say thanks guys for sticking around and for, I have been way more, successful on YouTube than I ever planned on being. It's been crazy for me. So I just want to extend my gratitude. And obviously this video has been a long time coming. I totally forgot that we were even doing this on a yearly basis until Glitch, who does artwork for my videos, reached out and he was like, hey, aren't you going to do another one of those videos? I was like, oh yeah, that's right. So here we are. I meant to have this out in like January or February, but I ended up losing like all the footage. So I started over. It's a little bit more concise now. I wanted this to be even shorter than last year's video, but that did not happen at all. If you look at the length of this video, it is ridiculously long. So in order to streamline your experience, I have a lot of timestamps and I have a little goodie bag for you. So first of all, if you're only really interested in just having more music and you don't really want to listen to an hour-and-a-half podcast or whatever this is, I have a Google Drive folder in the description, and it mostly has stuff, sections that were cut from the Morpho Medley in there, and I have them labeled properly, so hopefully you know exactly where they would have been or which track they come from. And I have like one thing I think from Megalo Strike Back that I ended up cutting, and I think that's about it. But yeah, all that's there. I also have two new pieces, so I have a kind of chill 7-minute original piece that's roughly based on some of the remixes that I did in 2021. And I also have a remake of a fan-made, quote-unquote, original track that I did for the Kirby and the Amazing Mirror Medley, which is the False Dark Meta Knight theme, also known as question mark, which is a fantastic name for a boss battle, gotta admit. But anyway, so you can check that out if you want, but without further ado, I have this video broken up into 3 categories. So first of all, we're going to talk about the non-Kirby remixes that I did for 2021. I'm going to go over the audio aspect of it. I'm going to talk about whoever was involved and any other struggles or interesting things. Then I'm going to talk about all the stuff for the Morpho Medley that we have so far. So here are the 2 timestamps for those. And for the third and final segment of this video, I just have a bunch of kind of leftover stuff. So I wanted to share a couple audio interviews that I did with some folks that worked on the videos, and also some of the gifts that Star actually sent me over the mail that I thought were really sweet. So, so there you go. And I hope you guys enjoy it. Like, it's been really mind-blowing for me to keep doing this, and everyone has been really supportive of me. Like, Star has been a really great pillar for me. I'm meeting great new people like Parasite. I've been getting to know better. He's awesome. Noel, I've worked with several times. He's a super chilled guy. Glitch has always been an incredible asset for me on these videos as well. And Jameson is, oh my god, Jameson has been, he's the guy who does a lot of edits for my videos, and he's just unbelievable. So without further ado, let's get into it, and I hope you guys like it. Okay. This is an awesome song. I love Toby Fox, and this song, when I first heard it, I was like, this is a fucking brilliant composition. And the thing that makes it so cool is that it has a really complicated lead melody, but everything is so coherent and audible, and the way that the notes are articulated is so great. You can hear clearly everything that's happening. And it has kind of like a bouncy, fun, rhythmic thing to it, but it's also really nefarious. So despite the fact that Megalo Strike Back actually had nothing to do with Kara to begin with, I think it suits the character perfectly. So in case you're not aware, I believe the first time the Megalo Strike Back got connected to Kara in a big way was on a fan-made video by this person. So they did this Kara sprite animation. It's amazing. It's just called, Kara fan-made boss battle or something like that. And they used Megalo Strike Back, and I think it just sort of kind of caught on after that. It's just perfect. But it was originally made for a fan-made Earthbound album. I think it actually existed before Undertale was even a thing. And just Toby Fox did the song for it. So, there you go. When I first started making this, a lot of the time when I'm not really motivated to make a remix, I'll just sit down and write a random piece of music, and then I'll overlay motifs over the top of it, and then I'll bring that into the final product later as some kind of refrain or something. Like you'll have the remix, and then it'll play this weird random section, and then it'll go back to the remix, and then blah, blah, blah. But that section that I wrote ended up getting cut because it didn't really fit into the context of the rest of the song. It's actually kind of cool, but it's just kind of random. It had a lot of weird time signatures, just kind of a little bit sloppy, but I'll play some of it for you now. I'll also include it in the little Google Drive thing in the description. Sit down and you have an idea of how you think the remix needs to sound, it can actually cloud your judgment because you get so fixated on I want this to sound like this or I want this to sound like that you're not really open to the flexible flow of music creation. And what ended up happening here when I was actually doing the full track was it had a bunch of weird accordion like pirate motifs. It just worked really well with the melody. Like there's a part where it has the accordion playing, it has like a marching band drums and stuff, and then it takes that same melody that's playing with the lead and it goes into a rock chiptune kind of thing, and that is probably one of my favorite parts of the remix. Then it goes into Battle Against the True Hero. Just, a lot of ideas that went into this remix actually were suggested by Noel. So he also provided some samples of Undertale sound effects. So you heard the little sound effect when a monster dies right there. So that was provided by him. I also have the heart-breaking sound effect that appears right before this section with the battle against Sans with the Sans. So I'm going to definitely have to look at the audio waveform for when I scream that into the microphone. He helped me out a lot with this remix. He also suggested the No More Deals fan game, which I used as the background. So that's not the sprite animation I was talking about. That's actually a fan-made game. It's pretty cool. I actually haven't played it myself. It's funny because there's actually some dialogue where there's some major typos. So it's kind of funny. But yeah, using that as a, gameplay for the background, it's just brilliant idea. So, major thanks to him. The only other thing I wanted to say about this is just that the mix is not very good. The hi-hats and the drums are way too loud. It sounds like something like a train shooting off steam, or it's like shh. And I actually had that problem mixing with Super Mario Bros. 3, the boss medley that I did. It has the same problem. In fact, a lot of songs that I did all the way up until late 2021 ended up having that problem with the hi-hats, because I like to do a lot of stuff with the drums, but when I compose, I have two ways of composing. One is that I'll use my keyboard and just record me playing the drum beat by pressing keys on the keyboard. But the thing is with that is it can sound kind of sloppy. It sound kind of random. Your best bet is to go back and edit it so it sounds a little bit more natural. And when you have hi-hats and parts of the drums that are so loud, it becomes really obvious that it was kind of sloppy. So aside from that, I was really happy with this remix. I just want to point out the fuck up, because there's always a fuck up in the videos every time. And this one I only take partial guilt for, because it technically wasn't my gameplay that I was using in the background. But there may have been a little friendly mouse over here saying hi, and I didn't even notice that until I started doing the behind the scenes video. So there you go. So here's what Glitch, the artist for the video, wrote up about Megalo Strike Back. It's hard to think that this track was a 2021 release. Kara is an interesting character, much like many of Toby Fox's colorful cast, and this is mostly due to theories and the AUs like Glitch Tale by Camila Cuevas, which just finished its second season at the time of this writing, or the Interlopers series by NCH Productions, Sturlock, and a massive collab of artists and animators, which wrapped up rather neatly, I think. I implore you to please check those projects out if you're unfamiliar. I don't have much to say about this track, TBH. Well, thanks, Glitch. Newell wrote up a lot of stuff on his contributions to videos for my channel for this year. He's done artwork and he's provided motif suggestions and other things, but I'm just going to start by reading out what he wrote up for Megalo Strike Back. He says, okay, so this year, including videos I gave input on, motif ideas, or artwork for, I worked on a total of 8 videos this year. Morpho will be in its own section, but going over the non-Morpho stuff real quick, I gave suggestions for Kara, as well as told Light about the recently made fan game No More Deals for footage, as well as gave him a pack of Undertale sound effects to us, which he responded with the flowy voice clip, that's a wonderful idea. LOL. And he's got other stuff here, but we'll get to that when we get to that. This is Trainer Battle remix from Firered and LeafGreens. When I think about what kind of remix I want to do, like, do I want to do this game or that game? A lot of the time, I like to do things that are semi-popular. I don't like to do things that are super popular, but there are some exceptions, and sometimes it's because I already have a fan base that likes watching X, Y, and Z. Sometimes it's just because I don't care and I love the song and I just want to do it anyway. That was the case for this one. The thing is, most people just do a remix of the Trainer Battle theme based on Red and Blue. So it was a little bit different. I just love the Firered and LeafGreen soundtrack. And I really love Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald, but to me, especially with the battle themes, a lot of the tracks, it's kind of like a quality over quantity type of thing. There's some really beautiful tracks in Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald, but I think that soundtrack shines more on the non-battle themes department. The thing that I love so much about this soundtrack is that if you isolate just about any instrument and you listen to it on its own without any of the backing tracks, it's so interesting. There's so many cool melodies being played on top of each other. It's like one of the most complicated, Pokemon soundtracks out there in terms of composition. It's so fucking cool. I just love that. I love the drums. I love all the brass. I love the guitar. Every time I listen to this song, like, I've known this soundtrack for maybe 16 or 17 years or something like that. I still hear this song and I hear new parts to the backing tracks that I didn't even notice before. Like, there's a weird guitar thing playing in one ear that I'd never really even noticed before in certain parts of the song. So it's just super cool. And when I was remixing it, I had such an attachment to the original sound that I didn't want to change it. So it was very difficult for me to make something that I liked. It's funny because when you like a song, it's usually pretty easy to remix it, but when you have such an attachment to how it's supposed to sound, anything else can sound off. So that was definitely the case here. I ended up using a lot of sound fonts from the original. I actually referenced the original Red and Blue version of the Trainer Battle theme at one point. I think it turned out well in the end. The drums are a little bit sloppy, but aside from that, it's a very full sounding remix and it has a little bit of an edge to it, so I like that. But I don't have that much to say about the musical portion of the video. I wanted to talk about the visuals a little bit. So I asked Moonman and Glitch to do, front and back sprites of the Pokemon and choose the Pokemon that they wanted, and they did. They also chose the movesets for each Pokemon, which is pretty awesome. They also had little cute names for their Pokemon, and not only that, but they also did trainer sprites for both of them as well. They both did an awesome job on all their artwork. Glitch's Pokemon have some really like kind of cool detailed shading, and I love that he has the Jigglypuff has the marker, and she's pissed off. Moonman also did an awesome job. I really love his style. I haven't worked with him very often, but every time I do, I really love the stuff that he does. He actually ended up making more Pokemon than Glitch because he has Ditto in his party. So he made all 3 Ditto versions of Glitch's Pokemon. So in the battle, it just ended up being Ditto as Jigglypuff, and you can see his little smiley face and little eyes. I thought these were the eyes that were drawn on, and that was the real face, but I think it's vice versa after talking with him. He also did Butterfree. You can see in the background here, Butterfree has little smiley Ditto faces on him, so that's pretty awesome. And then at the end, Ditto shows up as Porygon, but it's not actually a fully done version of Porygon. It's literally just like a fucking piece of cardboard with Porygon on it, and it's Ditto transformed as that. And so somebody saw this little outro thing, they were like, I don't get it. And I think the joke is that Porygon, if you look in the Pokedex, is actually a man-made creation. So it's just kind of funny. And it's also funny because he ended up winning the battle. So having just defeated Porygon and then having Ditto turn into the little thing of Porygon is like his way of being like, fuck you, I win. So I thought that was kind of funny. I don't know how likely it is for this to get a sequel, but I'd love at some point to do another one of these. I'll definitely do more Pokemon remixes in the future. But, you know, I was going to say if I did end up doing another trainer battle video like this with Glitch or Moonman or anybody really, it would be tempting to, you know, rig the battle so Glitch wins because Moonman had the victor this time, but it's just gonna have to be all up to whatever happens. So great job to both of them. I really love everything that they did for this video, so thank you so much. So here's some stuff that Moonman wrote up for his contribution to the trainer battle video. So basically at the time I decided to do some experimenting with the artwork. I wanted ghostly looking figures to have a fuzzy look to them, and the more alive characters to use a regular brush. I have long since abandoned this concept, by the way, but it was an interesting idea. As for my team, I chose Pokemon that I really like, but were also really good for battle, except for Ditto. I chose him for lols. Lastly, the names of 2 of the Pokemon. I named Grice after Grice, a wizard boy with tentacles, and the name Juniper comes from a cow farmer who humorously has big bosoms. Also, she's named after a tree. Lol. So he has the 2 artwork pieces of the characters that he mentioned right here, and they are absolutely adorable. So thanks, Moonman. And here's what Glitch wrote up about his pieces in this trainer battle remix. This remake was very unique, and getting to see a simulated battle against Moonman's team was very cool. The battle was so close, I totally should have taken the W. Trying to emulate the darker and duller color palettes of early Pokemon was a challenge to be sure, though I wish I had stuck with 4 specific colors or less like the original. I personally think it's Moonman's wonderful work that takes the cake here visually. I'd be honored to work artistically again with them in the future for our rematch. Again, I would love to see it too. But thank you guys. Okay. 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 All right. So I love Wind Waker. I love the music. This is a beautiful song. It's a pretty simple melody as well. I actually was in VC with Star and Noel, and I think Star pulled in like a big old thing of Molgera. It was a model, and so we were really admiring all the different models from Wind Waker. And so he pulled in a Molgera model, and I think Noel said something like, I could do artwork of that, or sprite art, and I was like, dude, if you do, I will straight up do a whole Link to the Past remix of Molgera. So he did. And it looks awesome. And it was super easy to make this remix. It was great for me because I was actually moving at the time, so I didn't really have an opportunity to make a lot of music. So it was one of the easiest remixes I've ever done. It was a little bit challenging because Link to the Past sound font is really, 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 really limited. There's really 2 or 3 things that make it so difficult to like use it as a proper resource. And number one is there's only like 2 drum sound effects in the whole sound font. There's the snare and the cymbal. So it's like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? I guess you could technically count the timpani, but yeah, it's not really in the drum samples. So whatever. So what I have to do in order to create more of an impact is to use the snare notes, you know, have certain notes louder than others. So that's why when you hear that, you know, at the beginning, there's certain snares that are being played at 2 times velocity. So that is how you kind of create that relationship in between the percussive notes to almost have like more percussive sounds, but not really. I love using sound fonts that are super limited. It's so cool because it really forces you to think about things differently. And I sound like some like old man who's like, back in my day, you gotta learn how to use the things that you don't want to use because it's better to limit yourself to only drinking Cheerios and water. but I mean, it's awesome because, you know, I think somebody said something about, you know, old video games, like, limitations breeds creativity, and that's 100% the case. I would totally recommend anybody who makes remixes to work with a really limited sound font just to see what you can come up with. And you'll actually find yourself gravitating towards new sounds and new ways of approaching the music that you never would have thought of before. So it was really fun for me. It's such a simple melody that it wasn't very difficult to do. And, you know, there's not that many layers that I can add to a Super Nintendo remix anyway, so it didn't take very long. I used a lot of a delay effect over some of the instruments, so delay is different from reverb. Reverb is like an echo. Delay is like is an echo, but it's timed in a specific way where the echo can actually happen in tandem with the beat of the song itself. So one of the other things that I really love about delay is you can actually have the echo flipping between the left and the right ears, and it creates this really cool effect. So I was using a lot of that to create a bigger sound to the Super Nintendo sound font. Obviously, I wasn't using like an SPC or, you know, I don't use Fama Tracker when I do an 8-bit remix. I don't even think I've done an 8-bit remix publicly yet. But, you know, I just kind of have to entrain myself with the natural sound of a Super Nintendo in order to replicate it properly. But it, you know, it was pretty easy. So I don't really have that much to say about this track, aside from that. And I will say that, you know, I love the piece that Noel did. And also, he wrote up some stuff about this behind the scenes video, but I don't know if he mentioned, there's actually an Easter egg here. These numbers actually are a significant date. It was when Wind Waker was released. So there you go. That's pretty awesome. So here's what Noel wrote up about his Molgera piece. The biggest non-Morpho contribution I made this year was definitely Molgera. The process for this one was a mix of sprite editing, sprite reconstruction with the room, as well as original work. Overall, I'm happy with how it came out in the video, especially with how Light incorporated footage into the background to make the art really pop out. Awesome. Appreciate it, man. In the distant future, maybe we'll do some more Zelda stuff together. Wink, wink. Okay. So, this is what I believe is the first fully original track on my channel. And So TNH did a commission for Glitch. He made a song that was based on one of Glitch's OCs. It was Lily. And I was like, okay, I want to do an original piece for my channel. So let me just, do one of Glitch's other characters. So that ended up being Majora Storms. So it's not Majora from Majora's Mask, but maybe at some point we'll touch on that again. There was a little bit that went into the musicality of this, so there's a lot that I want to touch on. First of all, when you are a remixer and you're doing a original piece, so it's actually kind of funny because it seems like video game covers is sort of a niche thing, but it's actually much easier to make a name for yourself when you're attaching yourself to existing source material than it is to just do something completely original. So going into this, it's always a little bit difficult. This is something that I think DeSolo Xantis also has talked about in the past is, it's really hard to gain traction and recognition for original music. Within the context of that, I went back and forth with Glitch and also with Parapsych a little bit about ideas. I even had Glitch choose the instruments that he wanted to have used in the song, so it limited it a little bit. It was quite fun, actually, but in the end, it was sort of like a rock/electronic track. There's a lot of motifs that come, in one point in the track and return at another point, so I was really happy with the circular progression. The only thing that I think I didn't really like about what ended up being in the final version was just the mix. Like, I was having so much trouble with mixing my tracks at this point in time, just because I really wanted to have good instrumentation, but trying to use those instruments with a good proper mix that's not too heavy on the low tones or the high tones was very difficult for me. So that was pretty obvious in this track because the drums sound like they were recorded in like a tin can. Compositionally, I think it turned out really well. So there's some interesting things about the artwork here. So there are two sketches of Majora. This one was done by the Crazed Doodler. He did a sketch based on Majora for Glitch, and he did it on Twitter, and Glitch showed it to me, and I was like, I kind of want to use that in the video. Could you ask him for permission? He actually came back and redid the whole piece and added more shading and detail, and I didn't ask for it or pay him or anything like that. He literally just made it for the sake of doing it, and it was the sweetest thing ever. It was so sweet. So he did that. He ended up retweeting the video as well. So that was just awesome. And then Parapsych actually did this piece right here. There's some really interesting stuff that he kind of has. The program that he uses is very interesting. So he actually talks about that a little bit. I'll have him share his written piece for the video afterwards. He also talks on some other things, some other projects that we've got going on. So I'm sure you'll find that pretty intriguing. But yeah, I mean, Bolt was a great way to kickstart original pieces. I actually have another piece that is done, that's original, that I'd like to upload at some point, but I don't really know what I want to do for the visuals. It's called March of the Blueberries, and it's a really fun, like, kind of rock/chiptune song, really kind of funky. I can't wait to share that with you guys. But yeah, Bolt was a pretty fun track. There's also a motif from one of TNH's original songs in here as well, and then at the very end, it brings back the motif at the very beginning of the song. So it's just, it's creating motifs within the context of a 5-minute song, drawing on those motifs and expanding on them, because I don't have a source material to connect the listener to, so I have to create a narrative within these 5 minutes that the listener can connect to and relate to and easily recognize. So it was fun. That's pretty much all I have to say about this one. But yeah, the editing was easy. I just used some backgrounds in FL Studio. Parapsych actually gave me some tips on how to use the artwork a little bit better. So overall, it was a pretty easy video to do. And then Glitch also has some numbers in the background, which I think is like the serial number for Majora or something like that. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. So here's what Parapsych said about Bolt. For the Majora artwork scene in Bolt, I used Pokemon Art Academy, just like I've always used for close to 7 years now, and got glitched to crop her out for transparency. Hopefully by the time this video goes up, I'll have moved on to a better art program, lol. But I guess there's the specialty experience. She was definitely harder than I anticipated to pose and draw as such too. I wanted her to appear like an action heroine like her character image is. Especially when it came to light, the crazed doodler's bust shot was also being used for the video. She's generally a pretty detailed character, with cybernetics visible on her skin and whatnot, and that was also my first time drawing and designing her trident, the Storm Surge, so you can imagine it was quite a tedious process. But Glitch and I like how it turned out. Wore me out too much to make a second piece of art like I wanted to, though. Was going to put her on a motorcycle, but that didn't wind up happening in time. Glitch was also going to lend some art of his own, but it was going too slow and he wasn't happy with it either. So that didn't make the cut for the video either. We're still very satisfied with what did come out of it though. Light, Glitch, and I were all very close in touch with each other during Bolt's production. We wanted to steer the song to be like a great hero had entered the scene, since that's basically what it's for in Majora's Altacaria context. It's not super pumped up like a battle theme, not supposed to be, but it does still have an energizing, hopeful feel to it that we managed to land right after a bit of trial and error on Light's part and taking our suggestions. Mostly mine. When I get a vision right, it doesn't deviate too far from it if I have any say in it, and Light's told me time and time again he appreciates the input for quality control, haha. I try not to be too overbearing. We also snuck in a couple appropriate reference motifs to a couple of other related compositions T&H has made. If you're a real one, you know what they are and ought to recognize their appearances in this track. Winky face. Like I said, Majora's theme is an energizing rockish tune that strikes fear into her enemies, but hope into those she protects. Combined with the electrical motif of her abilities, I came up with this simple yet effective name, Bolt. Bolt of lightning, bolt like running. It's a powerful word. I had a hand in the editing department too. I realized with the assets we had, but the song already being made, the video wasn't going to be very interesting for just 2 still images on a background. So I had the idea for switching which art is on screen at a time. You have crazed Doodler's warm, smiling art during the more upbeat parts of the tune, and mine with the more dynamic fighting pose when it gets a little more serious, and some zooms to appropriate the intensity of certain sections. It isn't much, but it's the little things. Working with Light is a real inspiration. I've been much more involved since Bolt. It's few and far between because he's a very busy dude, but it's awesome to tap in. From an idol of sorts, the guy who made really good Kirby remixes back in the day, to a pretty good friend, I'm always happy to lend a hand. And I think with the things I've pitched into, we really bounce off of each other in a great way. Hopefully by the time this video goes up, a couple more of those have aired, and you, the viewer, will know what I'm talking about. Many thanks for having me. Also, I should mention, yes, the boss raid on T&H's channel is tied to the Morpho Medley. How exactly so? You'll have to wait to find out. Thanks so much, Para. I love all the pieces that you wrote for this. I think they're fantastic. Katsuki and Izuku was a song from My Hero Academia. And anytime that I do an anime remix, Jameson has consistently produced AMVs for the video, and it's just, they're amazing. That gives me a major opportunity to just take a break. All I really have to do for the video is just make a song, and then he finishes like the AMV, and all I have to do is put a couple effects over it, put the title, put the credits, and then it's over. That's kind of the main reason why I ended up doing this track. I don't have a huge attachment to My Hero Academia. Jameson is a huge fan of the series, so his passion, I think, for the series ended up showing through the most. I think the AMV is kind of what gives the song life. But the original song, Katsuki and Izuku, from the anime is really, really good. It actually has really fantastic instrumentation, and it was challenging because the funny thing about a lot of video game music is very rarely does it ever use the kind of instrumentation that I really, really like. But this was a perfect example of like something that I was just like, oh my god, this is like everything that I want in my music to sound like. So when I was coming into it, I was like, fuck, you know, it's already so good. What am I supposed to do different? So what I ended up doing is something that I will be doing in a lot of future videos. So I limited myself to use only a certain number of musical layers at once. So it's a little bit hard to explain, but most of the time when I make a song, a lot of the sections of the track, especially the more intense parts or the really like extravagant sections with a lot of strings, they'll have like 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 layers playing at the same time. So you'll have drums, bass, you'll have the lead melody. Maybe the lead melody is accompanied by another instrument that's also playing along with it. You might have a guitar part playing in the background and then strings on top of that. And sometimes you might even have like a vocal thing playing as well. So that's like 7 tracks all together. It really just depends on the song. But there's a problem with this approach. Like, it's really cool because it creates such a big, dynamic, explosive feel to the track, and you don't really have to do that much with the melodies that are there, but it suffers a little bit because it's very difficult to mix, or you can actually hear everything. It doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. You can hear everything just as long as you can feel it. But it kind of nullifies the characteristics of the melodies that are playing. So you can't really listen into one thing. You know, what's the guitar doing? Well, I can't really tell. What's the choir doing? I mean, it's doing a couple things, but you can't really sit down and appreciate everything that's happening at once. So as a musician, it can get really overbearing and distracting when you've got like 20 or 30 instrument tracks on the remix and you're trying to go back and fix one thing or improve something else, and then your solution, which is the case for me, is to just add another layer onto it, and that gets really exhausting. And when you're rendering a file, it can take longer. You know, when you want to go back and see if something, you can change something, it's a little bit of a mess. So with Katsuki and Izuku, I limited myself to only using a few instrument tracks at the same time. To be honest with you, at the time that I did this video, I didn't really like the way that it was going. I didn't like simplifying it, but in hindsight, I think it's a pretty decent remix. However, I don't think the method that I was using was really working, because I was still a very much amateur at mixing the track. Nowadays, I've kind of come up with a way to remedy this, and I'm actually going to be using this method for the vast majority of remixes in 2022. I'm simplifying it a little bit, and I'm going to try to only use about 4 tracks on any given remix for any given section, aside from maybe like having notes carry over from one section to the next. That I'll make an exception. But it's cool because when I'm forcing myself to only work with a certain number of musical layers at once, when I want to fix a problem with the melody, I have to resort to changing the instrument or changing the actual composition to be more interesting. And that is probably the best way to focus on, you know, making better music. So that's a process that I'm going to be using more in the future. So yeah, I mean, this was a great learning process for me. To me, the highlight of the video is by far Jameson's AMV. Even not knowing that much of the context of the My Hero story, I still thought this was an amazing AMV. So yeah, thanks so much to him. And that's about all I have to say about this track. I really wanted to do Spider Dance for a really long time, but it had already been like, what, 6 years since Undertale was first released, so I was like, I kind of missed my window. But then Undertale came to Switch, and Mad Mew Mew was the thing, and it was basically Spider Dance 2.0. But it's really cool. I might even like this version of the song a little bit more than Spider Dance. It has kind of the same characteristics as something like Megalo Strike Back, where it's playful, but it's also kind of nefarious. It sounds evil, but it's also really, really catchy. And that's some of my favorite stuff. You know, it's relatively easy to remix, but there was one thing that I wanted to say about the particular style that I used with this remix. So when I did this song, I was using a totally different method of making music. I didn't like the idea of making a video with a template, or having the same template for every single video that I was making. Having the same sounds, having the same edits, having the same format. I didn't like that idea. I wanted it to just be fluid. But as time went on, it got progressively more and more taxing to have to open up an FL Studio project file and literally scroll through hundreds of instruments to find something that I liked. For every remix, I was using different instruments. So what I did for this one is I created an instrumentation file that had all my favorite instruments, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to use this from now on, with the exception of maybe a couple new instruments anytime I need them. But the problem with that is that it's very weird when you're mixing a song. It's especially when you're new to mixing instruments, how difficult it is to make instruments sound good with each other, especially when you think in theory that they will. There's certain ways that instruments have a way of interacting with each other where frequencies will cancel each other out. You have to mess with the audio waveform. That's what I really learned when I was doing this remix. You have to go in and you have to mess with the audio waveform. On FL Studio, there's a little line that you can pull up the frequencies. So it's not the same thing as having a high pitch and a low pitch. It's a totally different thing. So you'll actually hear the low tones of the note being played louder than the high tones if you have a high-low frequency. Some instruments you can't really hear unless they have a really high mid frequency. And other instruments, they might have a nice crisp sound with a big high frequency. So it really just depends on the instrument. And the problem with Mew Mew's remix was that there were way too many high frequencies. It just sounds like a big sandwich, a sandwich where the only thing on it is like, I don't know, it's just like 4 pounds of mustard. Like there's no, it doesn't have a great foundation to it. I actually wanted to say, talk about my own insecurities as well, because I actually sort of began this soul searching, quote unquote, of how to make a better remix in early 2020 when I did a collab with TNH. It was a Megalo collab. It was for his boss raid, and I hadn't done anything for YouTube in a long time, but I had been making music for a while. I made phase 1 of this particular medley. I've been, extremely fortunate, maybe even spoiled, to the point of where I haven't had to deal with a lot of criticism on YouTube or any social media platform for that matter. But this was the first time when I finished it and it went public, and a lot of the people were like, kind of thought it was underwhelming. They weren't a big fan of phase 1. And I remember just looking at some of this stuff and my heart just dropped. I was like, because, there's literally nothing wrong with criticism. So I'm not talking bad about the people who didn't like it whatsoever. But the thing is, like, when you're an artist and you're producing something and you're trying to make it sound as good as possible, the last thing that you want to do is work really hard on it, and then everyone looks at it and they're just kind of like, eh. So it's really hard to digest that and kind of transform it in a really productive way, especially when you listen back to this thing that you've made and you're like, I can totally see the point, like, of why people would say that. It's very, very, very difficult to integrate that and to take it responsibly, and kind of evolve your style and not take it to heart and still be productive, and just, it's very difficult. So I think I was still a little bit in that headspace because TNH, for instance, has a really great style. He has a very defined style, and this is actually something that, this is a sort of style that he's developed over the course of a couple years, and it's really super specific to his type of music. So I was kind of like, I want to do something like that. I want to have an identity. So when I started using this method of instrumentation where I was using the same instrument file for every song, that's kind of what I had in mind. I just wasn't very good at mixing these particular instruments with each other yet. So it was a struggle. I almost abandoned this method of remixing, but it actually ended up being super handy, and I'm still using it to this day. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. There's a couple cool motifs in here. Noel referenced, he was like, maybe you should do the trailer theme for the Switch Undertale. And so I did that right here. So that was kind of fun and really obscure. There's a couple songs that I'll do some really obscure motifs in. I like doing that. It's a little bit wonky. Sometimes I'm a little skeptical of it, but it's actually really cool, especially when people actually recognize it. But yeah, there's that. There's the Mad Dummy thing. There's a couple sound effects of the Switch controllers clicking in. There's a lot of stuff I wanted to say about the artwork. So this was the first time that I saw Glitch doing sort of an anime-esque character. And I really liked it. I thought he did a fantastic job. I think he had a couple different ideas of how he wanted it to look in the end. I don't know. I just thought it looked great. And there's a lot of cool things that he did as well. So he has Mad Mew Mew in blue and red. He has Mad Mew Mew in green and red. He has Mad Mew Mew in like purple and orange somewhere in here. Where is it? There it is. So these are all based on the different Switch controller combos. So there you go. He also has the Mad Dummy and Napstablook, so he had to tell me. I actually didn't realize that he wanted me to use these to represent the Switch controllers as well. When I first had it in the video, I had Mad Dummy in the middle bouncing to the music and then Napstablook on both sides. So that's something else I wanted to say to anybody who's worked with me or who will work with me in the future. It's like, I think it would be a good idea for me to make more of a habit of actually running every version of the video as a draft by the person that I'm working with before it goes public. Here's the thing. You have to have a certain amount of flexibility when you're working with a group of people, because otherwise it's just going to take literally forever. But if you have somebody who's like consistently misunderstanding the way that your art needs to be used or your edits or something like that in the final version of the video, you got to let them know. And I really appreciated that Glitch told me, because otherwise I had no idea. I was like, that's pretty cool. So yeah, the artwork is super great. I really like these shots of Mad Mew Mew where it has the big outline. That was literally something that happened by accident when I was just messing with the green screen effect where it cuts out a bunch of her colors. But yeah, that was that. And then Glitch also has a bunch of funny animations of Mad Mew Mew getting slaughtered at the end of the of the video. So there you go. And he also wrote up some stuff about this video as well, so I'll have him share that with you. Here's what Glitch wrote up about his art in the Mad Mew Mew video. Wow, wow, wow. I remember this. So many heads were involved, and the various color palettes took inspiration from Switch Joy-Con colors. I wanted her to be very expressive, even if some heads were questionable. It's a shame they aren't nearly as popular in the fandom as other characters, but she's one cool cat. You're damn right. I love Attack of the Killer Queen. It's a great piece of music. It was also a really great excuse for me to do the cutscene theme with the Queen, which was one of my favorite songs, actually, from the soundtrack. It's really beautiful, despite the fact that she's a fucking goofball. It was really funny because I had planned to do, I think it was an Oracle of Ages or Seasons remix on this week, but Deltarune Chapter 2 came out, and I was like, fuck everything else. I was like, we're going to do a remix from this game right now. And I was going into like super sellout YouTuber mode. I was like, we're gonna fucking get views up the wazoo. I was like, yeah, we're gonna capitalize on the hype, you know. I sat down and I played through the game, and I literally recorded all this footage so I could use it in the video, and I was writing down all the songs that I wanted to maybe do as I was playing through it. But the thing is, like, I actually ended up loving this game to death. Like, I really liked Chapter 1, but this was the shit. Like, I've clocked in an ungodly number of hours into this chapter. It's kind of stupid how many times I've played this over, to be honest with you, and I'm still finding out weird new stuff about it. So it went from this kind of like not so great reason to make a remix into like an absolute celebration of the game itself. Yeah, I mean, when I heard Attack of the Killer Queen, I was like, this is kind of the obvious choice. And what I like to do a lot of the time is when I'm doing a remix from a game that came out recently, and I have plans to do more tracks from it, is I'll do a track that's a really big part of the game, but the biggest track I don't want to do yet because I don't have a great understanding of the whole game. So I'll save that for later. So that's what I did here. This was one of my favorite tracks that we did for 2021. It was one of the first songs where I felt like I did a really good job with the mix. I was using a new drum kit at the time, a new drum VST, and it's called Perfect Drums. It's really, really great. And I think that made a world of difference. I also used a really fun bass instrument. It's a synth with a phaser over it. It's called the Snarling Pig. That was actually a term that was coined by my favorite keyboardist, Jordan Rudess. But he uses that for like solos and stuff, and I wanted to use it as a bass line. So if you listen, I think it's probably most audible around this section. You can hear this kind of like bass line that's like kind of like that. That's a sound, the Snarling Pig, which is something that I'm going to be using a lot more. I think it actually is much more audible here than it is in a lot of the other songs that I'm going to be using it in, and I think part of that has to do with the fact that the drum kit uses more of a high frequency sound, so it doesn't take up a lot of space with the low sounds. But now I'm just speaking in tongues. So let's get on with it. I say this a lot, like, music for me is a therapy. A lot of the time I forget that, but when I'm composing, it's a great opportunity for me to, especially if I'm experiencing some kind of negative emotion or something like that, to get that out there, especially since my process of remixing has more to do with my take on the particular remix rather than, you know, saying the same thing that the original composer said in their composition. Like, that's why I do tracks like boss themes and a lot of tracks that are in a minor key, is because that's my perception of music, is a way to deal with things that I'm experiencing. Like, you know, maybe I just gotten into a really bad argument with somebody, or maybe I'm facing the loss of connection with the friend or something, or maybe my job is fucking me over or something. I don't know. Whatever the thing is, when I sit down and I work on this music, not only does it create something that I'm really proud of and that other people can connect with and appreciate, but it also allows me to work through those emotions in a way that's really productive. It really is like a cheat. Like, it's a life hack. Like, it's unfair how effective this is. It almost doesn't seem like it should work, but it does. It's amazing what, you know, music therapy can do for you. And for me, being able to speak the language of music has helped me out so much. Even as a video game remixer, you might not think that much goes into a track, but it really does. Like, if you want to be a good musician, that's always what ends up happening. But in this case, it was a lot less about, you know, therapy for me, and a lot more about just celebrating the fun track. So that's what ended up happening, and I think that's one of the reasons why this ended up being one of my favorites, is because it's not something that I usually do very often. And I also wanted it to be just kind of a goofy video in general, so I have all kinds of really silly gameplay edits like this right here. And I think that that is the spirit of Toby Fox, is, you know, it's a game that's, it takes itself seriously in terms of how much enjoyment and how invested that the player can get into it, but it doesn't take itself seriously to the point where it's conceited. And it makes fun of you, and it kind of lets you relax a little bit, and it makes fun of itself, and that's something that I constantly, it's a message that I constantly need to be, you know, reminded of when in my day-to-day life, is that you don't need to take things so seriously, you know. So it's really, really a special song for me, and one of the few times that I felt like I really embraced that in the video, and I think it turned out really well. So Star did the artwork. He doesn't usually do artwork for non-Kirby videos, but he loves Toby Fox music just about as much as I do. So he did the Queen here. She looks very professional. She's got her little flames. He animated those pieces. He also did the acid barrier here. He offered to do some more pieces, but I was like, dude, we're already like doing so much for the Morpho Medley. Like, I'm kind of burned out. Let's just, like, it's whatever. But it was really kind of him to offer. So yeah, he did the stuff in the intro as well. He had the little thing around the heart. So really, really great stuff, as always. So that's all I have to say about Attack of the Killer Meme. First of all, I wanted to point out this little screen right here. I tell you, there's always a fuck up in like every single video. And the fuck up here is actually kind of funny. So Glitch, who did the artwork for the video, suggested Spamton's comeback special for the name, which is, I didn't even know was a quote from the game until after I'd finished the video. And he suggested that I spell it like this. I, for some reason, thought the comeback without the E was kind of weird, so when I did the actual thumbnail and title of the video, I spelled it with an E. Totally forgot that I'd already rendered this screen without the E, so whatever. And the funny thing about this, too, is at the end of the video, Spamton actually says something about, yeah, his comeback special, and he spells it correctly. Like, the one time when Spamton can actually get his damn spelling right is the time when it would have benefited me the most for him to fuck it up. So it looks like I was quoting him. But regardless, I think it's a great title. It's just funny that I couldn't get consistent with the spelling. I didn't even realize that that was the case here. So it's always a good idea when you're working with other people to have them look over it. But I did not do that here. So just the more you know. And we've got more typos coming, so stick around. Also, I am actually dyslexic. It's not a joke. So it fucks with me all the time. So anyway, this was a great way to end the year, because this was actually the longest video in 2021. And it's really funny that it ended up not being a Kirby video. In fact, I think this might be the longest non-Kirby remix I've ever done. First of all, Now's Your Chance to Be A, which is just a really beautiful title for a track, I gotta admit. The thing that was kind of funny about this is usually when I do a big medley, I like to do the biggest track first, like the most important track, and then I'll go back and actually do the sort of less extravagant tracks. I did that for the Soul Melter medley. So I did that here as well, so I had already made the vast majority of Big Shot when I was doing Now's Your Chance to Be A. One of the things that I actually really like doing is working backwards, because what it does is it gives you time to set up the rest of the track to actually lead up to the big finale. So there's sort of a cohesive mood increase throughout the course of the track, and you kind of know what you're building up to. But also what it does, which is really cool, is when you have a track like Now's Your Chance to Be A, which basically is a light, L-I-T-E version of Big Shot, you have to kind of justify its existence. So the most obvious thing for me to do is to make it like more intense or more extravagant, but I can't do that with this song. I have to use other resources, so I had to make it a different style. So what I ended up doing is I had actually, you know, more of a funk sound to this remix. There's a lot of really kind of funny things about Spamton's First Encounter theme. It has like no movement at all. Like there's no chord progression. The bass line is doing this like 3-second thing throughout the course of the whole track. It's like do 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 do. That's all it does in the original song. So I love chord progressions. Sometimes I'll even add chord progressions where there were none before. So with Now's Your Chance to Be a, I was a little bit more restrictive, but there were a couple things. So number one, my favorite thing about this whole section, and maybe even one of my favorite things about the track, was there's a big honky tonk breakdown section. It was right, where is it? Right here. It's got the underground thing. I don't like honky-tonk music, but I love stuff like this. My favorite band is Dream Theater, and they have a couple songs like Dance of Eternity that have these really cool like honky-tonk breakdowns, and what they'll do is they'll actually add a guitar to follow along with the bass line, so you hear the bass doing that doom 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 doom. You know, the guitar, there's actually a guitar riff playing along with that. And that creates this really dirty sound to it. It's so cool. So you have the lead melody doing one thing, right? But when the lead melody is so repetitious, like in something like Now's Your Chance to Be a, where it's like do 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 do, you can actually create a lot of interesting movement with the bass line because your ears are already accustomed to what's playing in the foreground. So your brain is just going to focus on something else. So what I did is I had sort of a bass slash guitar riff just kind of going wonky over in this section. By the way, this visual was sort of a almost unintentional reference to the Megalo Morpho Medley. So, yeah, there's a really fun, like, riff playing there. It's like, dun, da 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 dun, dun, da da dun. Obviously, I want to talk a lot about the artwork that Glitch did. I think he also wrote up some stuff on it. I'm going to check out his piece later, but I have to go through all the music first. So the Snowy Descent is actually a semi-original piece. Then there's a very specific idea that I kind of had about this track and what is going into it. And first I wanted to talk about the Snowgrave route just in general. So, and if you're unfamiliar with the Snowgrave route, it's basically just like the genocide route in Undertale, except for it specifically deals with your character manipulating Noelle, one of the secondary characters, into killing a bunch of people. One of the things that I kind of noticed is there's not really that many tracks, like music tracks, that are exclusive to the Snowgrave route. So this is actually really cool because when you're playing through the Snowgrave route, you're doing all these awful things to the monsters, and there's a little bit of musical representation, but not that much. And all the tracks that actually do appear in the Snowgrave route that are sort of indicative of the circumstances that you're actually experiencing, they're only a couple seconds long, and they don't accurately represent the emotions that you might be experiencing as a player. And you know what? That's perfect. And I'll tell you why. Because when you're playing a game that has a bunch of really negative circumstances that it's pushing you through, like a character dies, or maybe you're betraying someone, and there's absolutely no representation musically of it, you know, it's really funny because you think that when you have music that's scary or something or sad, that it actually, you know, makes you feel worse, but the thing is, it's walking you through your emotion. It's basically holding you by the hand and telling you, you know, you're right to feel this way. This is what's happening. But when you don't have the game actively telling you how to feel, and you're reading all these lines of dialogue from Noelle, like, isn't it good that I'm doing this? Isn't it good that I'm getting stronger? And she's basically gaslighting herself into being okay with being around some fucking crazy psychopath, and there's almost nothing else telling you what's going on. You just get really anxious. It's like, what the hell is happening? Like, you know something really god-awful is about to happen, but these external forces in the game are just leaving you completely alone with your thoughts. There's nothing telling you that you're feeling the right thing or you're feeling the wrong thing, so it just kind of, it's all over the place. It's a mess. It's a brilliant tactic to make you feel uncomfortable, and there's a lot of games that do this super duper well. One game in particular that does this that I absolutely love is actually Doki Doki Literature Club. And I say that knowing that I have gotten a lot of shit for actually liking that game in the past, but I think it's fucking brilliant, and it does stuff like this all the time. That is all a side note to what I wanted to say about the Snowy Descent, and that is, it's basically the opposite. The Snowy Descent is taking all the circumstances of what's happening in the Snowgrave route and walking you through it emotionally and a musical representation. So, you know, it starts out with kind of this ambient and kind of a little bit melancholy piano, and then it goes into some, it actually has a melody from the hospital scene with Noelle after the end of the Snowgrave route, and it has some other motifs in there as well, and then it has the main theme from Deltarune that comes in, and then it has a little bit of a build-up. It, you know, increases in key, and then it just kind of blows up at the end when she kills Birdley. The way that I composed it is something that I do a lot, but I'm not really sure if it works very well, is I just write a bunch of stuff, a bunch of original melodies, and occasionally I'll have a chord progression that fits with a motif, but for the most part, I just write a section of a track completely on its own, and then I'll add the motifs later. That's actually not really the most maybe effective way to write a piece of music that has existing source material, because when you try to add motifs on top of a melody that you created, it can actually be kind of obvious that the motifs were an afterthought. When you write the chords all around the melody of the the motifs, that's when everything feels kind of intentional and structured. When you're doing something like this, where you're writing a original piece of music with source material in mind, but the motifs are an afterthought, it's actually a really good way to express yourself, but it can feel a little bit half-assed. It's almost like Super Mario Bros. 2 and Doki Doki Panic, where it's like, that's a game that came out in Japan, and then they were like, oh, let's just sell it as a Mario game in the US, and then people played the game and they were like, this doesn't feel like a Mario game. By the way, I fucking love Mario 2, but that's all beside the point. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to stop composing like this because I really like doing it, but I will say, from an objective standpoint, it's probably the smartest idea to have the whole melody planned out beforehand with the motifs in mind before you start writing the chords, because that way nothing feels random or forced. So there's some motifs here as well. There's actually a reference to the Amalgamate theme from Undertale in this section. I'll play it for you right now. I think this is it. There's a couple other cool things. So when it has this little countdown in the foreground right here, that there's actually an electronic voice reading out these lines. And what's even cooler is something that is almost completely pointless for me to show you, because you really can't hear it at all. But there's actually a choir that sings "I'm with you in the dark" somewhere around here. Yeah, this is it. So it's I'm with you in the dark, like that. It's very difficult to hear, and the reason why I ended up burying it in the background is because the program that I use is really great for vocals. It's called East West Hollywood Backup Vocals. You can write phrases for it to sing, but it's very difficult to get it to sound like a natural voice. It's not really meant to be used on its own. Like, when you just write phrases, it's a little wonky. You have to be very specific about the way that you're writing it. You have to write each note as a syllable in the phrase. You can't just write the words out and then it knows how to sing it. And then on top of that, when you have consonants, sometimes they get in the way of when the note is actually being sung. So you have to move those notes in the, you know, MIDI pattern accordingly so that they actually appear before the thing. And then whatever. It's just a whole mess, and it's really complicated. And I don't like using that particular function of the vocals that much because it gets a little bit out of hand. And the reason why I buried it in the background is just because it doesn't sound that natural. So yeah, anyway, that's a lot. But that's the Snowy Descent. I felt a little iffy about it to begin with, but Noel, not Noel, but Noel actually was talking to me in VC recently, and he said that he thought it was fucking brilliant. So that made me really, really happy. It's time for Big Shot. When I was going into Deltarune Chapter 2 remixing, it's like most of the time I'm pretty late to the party. And somehow, even though it had only been a couple months, there were still a fuck ton of Big Shot remixes, and I was like 2 weeks after the game came out, it was everywhere. And I was like, oh my god, like, how am I supposed to justify another Big Shot remix? I mean, when I did Megalovania, it was like the most generic remix of all time. So it was a little bit intimidating going into this, but I'm really quite happy with the way the Big Shot remix turned out. You know, the composition of the remix was not very hard. What was probably the most difficult thing about making this was just all the audio clipping and stuff like that with the, you know, now's your chance to be a big shot, like, voice clips. That was actually quite difficult to do. It took a little practice, and it did get a little bit easier. But Big Shot, you know, the original song is such a brilliant piece of music. And what makes it kind of challenging to remix is it's one of these boss battle songs, and there's several of these, like Miracle Matter, for instance, where it's like, it's just a bunch of noise, but it's melodic noise, and there's some parts that are a little bit maybe more melodic than others, but it's really just about the groove. It's less about the melodies and more about the fucking groove, and it's a kick-ass groove for sure. So when you're trying to remix something like that from the standpoint of a musician who's composing things from scratch, you kind of have to forget everything. Oh, this note goes well with this note. No, it's not really about that. It's about what feels... It's what makes you feel like jamming out. That's what it's all about. As far as this remix goes, there's a couple things that I wanted to do when I was sitting down and planning this out. The first thing is I wanted to start the remix with, like, totally isolated, now is your chance to be a big shot voice clip. So I kind of did that. I also have the Gaster sound effect in the background right here at the beginning. I also wanted to do, that's something that you just heard there with the dun 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 dun. One of the things that I just love doing with that simple melody is like having it appear in different ways, like even messing with the now's your chance to be a big shot, you know, more. There was this whole section which I wanted to do, which messes with the time signature. So I literally, like, don't even know what's happening in this section, because I am, like, a 95% self-taught musician, so I don't really even know all the correct terms for everything. I think that it's in 7, and then it goes to 4, and then it goes to 3 with the time signature, so you can just count along and see if that's the case. So yeah, you get the idea. Well, I had to mess with it a little bit because at the beginning it sounded just completely random, and I only wanted it to be slightly random. I didn't want... So that is a very, very obvious example of me loving progressive music like Dream Theater, because they do stuff like that all the time. Another thing that ended up becoming a big part of the medley was Noel's theme, because it's just a beautiful piece of music. And when I heard Noel's theme for the first time, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And it's a really simple song. So this whole section right here, every time this riff ends, it ends with a little tiny piece of Noel's theme. And then at the end, it just completely turns into Noel's theme. It also has a different chord structure. It's so much fun to see an aspect of the game that was such a big part of what made it, like, really powerful and emotional, and actually capitalizing on that in the medley and bringing it to the listener's attention a little bit more. So that's what I wanted to do with referencing Noel's theme. And now my fucking narcissist side is showing with Light's Remai as Madison's favorite part. And I couldn't add an X on the end. I thought I was running out of space for the X. It wouldn't let me. I was like, boop, and it wouldn't let me add it. But when I finished, Metaton makes fun of me and says that I didn't even write that many words anyway. So I don't know if I ran out of space or what the fuck ever. But anyway, yeah. And then we have the Spamton shop theme, which is world revolving, which I also might remix at some point. I already have a bunch of stuff that I want to do, so we'll see what the future holds. I just love Deltarune music so much. I love Undertale, but Deltarune is my jam. There's a part in this little section right here. There's a little string solo here. So that whole thing, that's that actually first appears over here. So yeah, it's just a callback, so anybody who listens to the medley more than once probably might have noticed that, and they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. So having a circular progression was a big thing that I wanted to do. You know, my strong suit has, you know, I'm not Johnny Atma, who's a fucking master at almost every instrument, it seems. So it's like I kind of have to find different ways of capitalizing on what I'm good at. And one of the things that I have a lot of control over, because I'm writing on the computer and I'm basically, all my focus goes to the progression of the song and stuff like that. What I can do is I can write a cohesive, you know, story melodically. So that's one of the things that I focus on a lot, especially with these big medleys as of recent, is having a circular progression, having motifs that appear that kind of make sense. And so when I'm spending so much time thinking about how to tell that story musically, I think it really turns out well in the overall composition. And this, I think, was one of the best medleys in terms of having a cohesive storyline, in terms of like kind of like having a bookend to things, where it's like this motif appears here and this motif is in context with this track, which links up to this part of the game. And I was really happy with that. The only other thing about the song that I think maybe I could have worked on a little bit is just that, you know, I was getting back in this mode where I was just like, it has to be this way or it has to be that way. And when I did Attack of the Killer Queen, it was just sort of more like just having fun. And I think this was, I got really hooked on focusing on making it a particular way rather than just celebrating the music. So, I mean, you just gotta kind of have fun with it, right? This was my first time working with somebody besides Star Abraham on a really big scale project. And Glitch had a lot of ideas for what he wanted to do. He made a lot of pieces for this video, but one of the things that I loved so much in the final product was he gave me a bunch of pieces, but every single piece had a great place in the video. And every piece was like magnificently done and also a little bit versatile. So it was like I could use it in an interesting way. It was just like everything that he gave me was so valuable. So he has the little chomping Spamton here, which he made way before the video was completed. Then he's got the little dancing Spamton here, and that Spamton actually has a couple different variants. So his eyes, he's got the angry eyes, he's got the kind of cracked and fucked up eyes right here, and then he's got him with this static in his eyes. So that was really, really great. Then he has the little Spamton being held by, I'm assuming it's Gaster's hand. And then Noel actually did these pieces. He did these ads, which I love. They're just awesome. Glitch did the snow globe here, which I asked for. And I specifically asked for a snow globe because he gave Spamton a snow globe in this shot, which I just thought was fucking unbelievable. Like this piece, I sent it to one of my friends when he was done with it, and I was like, look at this fucking monster of an art piece. They were like, I want that as a fucking poster in my room. And I was like, that's what I'm talking about. So, just amazing. And Glitch did a couple different versions of Spamton. He has Enraged Spamton Neo, and then he has, I don't even know what this is. It looks like the little tiny things in the eyes. It looks like something out of Five Nights at Freddy's, but I seriously don't even know what the origin of this face is, but it looks pretty fucking awesome. He did all these pieces. So the funny thing is that when he sent me these pieces, they were actually at a square aspect ratio, kind of like an album cover. So I had to pan them in order to make it fit the widescreen aspect ratio of the video, but the resolution was so high that it didn't even matter. So he made all these pieces. He suggested the Gaster motif, but when he heard this piece, I think he got a bunch of visuals in his mind about what he wanted to do, and this is just amazing. So, just unbelievable. Like, everything that he did for this video, this is like the pinnacle of his artwork as far as I'm concerned. I was just so unbelievably happy, and, you know, I just want to extend my gratitude to him. I think he also wrote about it as well. So, I also wanted to mention that there's a lot of people who do a lot of really great Undertale fan videos and Deltarune fan videos. There's a lot of us who are big fans of this kind of content. Somebody who has been following a lot of Deltarune content creators is Christopher Moon. It's really amazing because it's like, you know, I don't spend a lot of time looking at comments anymore just because I get really overwhelmed really easily, so I just have to, it's for my own sake, you know. But when I read his comments, they're just so like thorough and beautiful. It's like, it's really special to have somebody like that in the community, because as content creators, we are seen as important, and we kind of view ourselves as important because we're bringing something to the table. But that kind of support is just as important. I can't even begin to tell you how much that does for us as content creators to have that kind of support. It's not something that we go into this thinking, oh, I have to get this kind of response from somebody, because at that point it's just toxic. But I just wanted to extend my absolute gratitude to Christopher Moon and other people who have provided that kind of support for the videos, because it's just like, just speaking for anybody who's a content creator, it's just, you know, it's the most important thing for us to know that people are actually enjoying it. When you make something that you're personally proud of, I think that's when it connects the most. So having that in tandem with consistent support and appreciation from your fan base is just like, it's a win-win-win-win. Knowing that other people are enjoying it as well is just like, it's one of the greatest gifts you can possibly hope for. So just, you know, wanted to say that. Here's what Glitch wrote about for his artwork in the Spamton medley. Holy Kungadiro, this one's a trip. Spamton is a gem of Deltarune's second chapter, and Neo is easily one of the most elaborate pieces I have ever made. A true testament to my growth this year as an artist. If there's one thing I learned while drawing Spamton Neo, it's that sometimes sketches don't fully translate into the final design's process, like in these pictures. A soul becomes a snow globe, the claws on the wing become clothes hooks, etc. I tried to give this song some Morpho Medley levels of contribution, but I have no clue how Star has the time, patience, or drive, so I kind of admire him for that. The one thing that sold me that had to be featured in the song, though, was Gaster. Gaster's anomalous role in Deltarune is so important to its continuity, and it had to be featured. Final note. It has truly been an honor to work with the many people who help bring these projects to life. It's inspiring and has kept me going as an artist for the longest time. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Glitch. So here's a little piece that Noel wrote about his Spamton ad. I made an ad for Spamton. I made 2 ads for him, actually. One more original and one sprite edit of one of the existing Addison ads. I went with the more faithful one because it looked better to me, even if the original one had a neat Wingdings font secret hidden in it. I don't think I've seen the original ad that he made, but that's pretty cool. Boom. Wouldn't you love it if my voice was actually in the original video? Wouldn't that just be the best? I think we'd have -5 views on it if that was the case. But anyway, we're kickstarting the Morpho Medley with Morpho Knight's theme. I mean, it's the purpose of this first track is just basically to set the tone for the rest of the medley. There's not a whole lot to say about it, but one of the things that I thought was pretty interesting is, you might not guess it, but Butterfly of Judgment is actually one of the hardest songs to remix out of any boss theme, in my opinion, because what's the 2 defining attributes of Morpho Knight's theme? In my opinion, it's the bass line and it's the piano. But the thing is, they're both batshit insane. It's not a very extravagant track. It's not something that's explosive, that's in your face. It's been described by some as being mysterious, which some remixes may or may not be as mysterious. That's a little bit of an inside joke because TNH and I did an old remix of this track, and we actually got some criticism because it wasn't very mysterious. It was actually more like rock-centric, but ended up redoing it. A lot of it had to do with the instrumentation that I put over it, to be honest with you. It was TNH's MIDI, and then I just basically remade it a little bit just to make more of a sound that was closer to the original. But afterwards, I was like, there's got to be a way to make Butterfly of Judgment sound more like a traditional boss theme. So that's what I basically went for here. I was actually pretty happy with it, but I was also really happy that T&H did the original MIDI for the Soul Melter medley, because I think this song is a pain in the ass. There's all this thing happening with the bass line where it's like do 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 do, and it's like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I'm sitting here with the, you know, YouTube tab open from Star Allies, listening to Morpho Knight's theme at 0.2.5 speed or whatever, trying to hear all the notes that are happening at once, and I can't quite figure it out. I wasn't even that big a fan of the original Morpho Knight theme, but the funny thing is that it suits the character really well because he's not particularly hard to beat. Whether intentional or not, it kind of works. The chord progression is actually very unusual. It's really kind of unique and weird, but it actually has a really cool payoff. But in the original track, it doesn't have this kind of explosive, you know, resolve to the track, but I'll show you what I mean right here. Like, that's a fucking awesome chord progression. And it's so funny to me because in the actual original song, that is exactly the same chord progression, but it's, you don't really notice it because it's such a, the song is more of a whisper. You know, it's more of a, it's not really about being all up in your face, but it lends itself to that kind of personality really, really well. So that's just funny. It's funny that it's hiding in there, I guess. But yeah, I mean, there's not that much to say. The most interesting thing about the track might just be the little medley that I did at the end. So what this is it's a little medley of all the upcoming Morpho Medley tracks in order of appearance, with the exception of Nightmare and Moonstruck, which I think got swapped. Only because I did Nightmare not that long ago. I did it in 2020, which seems like a long time ago now. But the guitar riff that plays during this part returns in the Dark Matter Morpho Medley. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the Morpho Knight remix. As far as the artwork goes, so this was a super fucking easy video for me to do because Star provided the artwork. He actually animated a lot of it, and then Jameson did the gameplay edits. So I really only had to do a couple minor edits. Like, I did most of the stuff in the intro here, but Star had actually already made a fully animated intro. He just couldn't send it to me, so I just had to remake it. And then Galactonite's right here. The animation on the butterfly is awesome. He looks over, he's like, what the fuck is that? And then he just transformed. So just started the background. He did Morpho Knight there. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all there is to it. It's pretty cool, though. And then Jameson did all the gameplay edits in the background. So he actually references all the boss themes here as well, with the exception of a couple subtle motifs that I don't think are as audible. But yeah, that's not too much to say. I like how Jameson, he makes a habit of doing this, but the boss is actually defeated on the last note of the song. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, that's Morpho Knight. The question has been asked, when am I going to do a remix of Passion of the Tridental Mages? That question may have been asked once or twice before, but the answer is now, or whenever this video came out, which is like February. I don't even know. There's a lot of points in the Morpho Medley when I felt like it kind of took a step up, and this was definitely one of those points. I mean, it's kind of obvious because the first track, the sort of purpose of the first Morpho Medley track was just to kind of like set the tone, be like, oh, you gotta open up the Morpho Medley with the Morpho Knights theme. So this was like sort of the Morpho Medley basically showing its true colors, and a lot of that has to do with Star's artwork, which he, you know, had gone into the project knowing that he was going to be doing stuff like this ever since he made the old-ass version of the 02 intro, which I will talk about later. First thing I wanted to say is that the original Passion of the Tridental Mages is a really great song in terms of its instrumentation, but the problem that I have with a lot of Star Allies music is that it's not very memorable. And that's a little bit of a controversial opinion because people get pretty passionate about some Kirby music, but I wanted to kind of remedy that a little bit, and I ended up repeating one segment of the song to kind of ingrain that part in the listener's memory before it moved on to the next part, more of a progression. And I also have a couple motifs that appear at one point in the track and come back at another point in the track. There's actually a part in the intro. It's got Zan in the rain. So that whole melody actually comes back at the very end, and it actually has a rain effect in the background at the same time. So that was my attempt at sort of giving the song a little bit more of its own identity. I also was happy with the mix here, and there were not a lot of songs around this time period where I liked the mix. I actually went through a lot of different versions of the mix, but the final product, I think, turned out well. I also did a totally different track for the intro. I ended up remaking the whole thing because I made this intro specifically to work in tandem with what's happening on screen. So I'll play that other old intro for you here. So you can definitely hear some, melodies that ended up coming back in the final version, but there you go. Aside from that, musically, there's not a lot to say about this track. It ended up being a pretty long song, actually, like 6 minutes long, but it doesn't have a lot of, outward motifs or anything crazy that's going on here. It's kind of contained within itself, so not too much to go into. I was pretty happy with it. I definitely think it has more relevance or maybe more of an impact than the first Morpho Medley track, but overall, it wasn't one of the ones that I really go back to. So, kind of funny how that works. As far as the artwork goes, this was, one of the first times that I was working with Star, and I really got to see how good he is at visual storytelling, and also specifically how good he is at depicting tragedy. Because, when you get to know Star, he is a major goofball. So I was so moved by all the stuff that he was making. I was like, where the hell have you been keeping all of these emotions? Like, what the fuck is going on here? It's hopelessness and all this stuff is all coming to such a beautiful fruition here, and also justifying the actions of the Mage Sisters by showing how they became attached to Highness in a way that, you can sympathize with. Is just perfect. It's perfect. So I really love that. He also did a really great job with the Mage Sisters here with their hair and stuff like that. So these were all separate assets that he gave me, and then I just had to sort of move them in a way that sort of created depth between the different body parts. So it was actually pretty difficult to do. It became way easier as I kind of figured out how my program works with these kind of things. But, yeah, I think it looks great. Jameson did the gameplay edits. He always does the gameplay edits for the Morpho Medley. Sometimes I do a few segments. But he was pretty upset because it ended up rendering like 24 frames per second. It's not really that noticeable. Now that I'm looking at it now, it's a little bit more choppy, but I mean, it still looks great. You know, I still think he did a really good job with it. But that's something that, you know, him and I are working on more recently. It's like, I didn't even think anybody really cared about the frame rate, but, you know, with the gameplay edits, it's important to have a high frame rate because there's so much happening at once, and it's about the impact in tandem with the music as well. So I thought it turned out well. I was happy with it, but it's just, I just don't have a huge attachment to this particular song. So that's just my personal thoughts on it. But I was really happy with all the stuff that Star did for the visuals. So definitely, it was a step up, I think. Bum, 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 bum. Oh, so there you go. There's a motif that I totally forgot about. That's actually Vocal Volcano in the background. Dun, 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 dun. So, I swear, I don't even remember half the shit that I do in some of these videos. I remember TNH one time reached out to me and he was like, man, I really like when you did this and that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So this was the true Squeak Squad theme, is what was actually the title for the Squeak Squad remix featured in Star Allies. I imagine that has something to do with the translation, but it's just kind of funny. So this was one of many tracks in Star Allies that was not really a medley. It was more of just a generic remix. So at this point in time, TNH had already done a Squeak Squad remix that was ridiculously fucking good. It was really good. So he basically made his statement on the theme, and I was like, okay, I got to do something different because I don't want to fucking have to just do what he did, except try to be better or just as good. So what I did is instead of having all the different Squeak Squad boss themes, I had Dark Nebula's theme in here. So it's actually a really underrated boss theme. The thing that sucks about Dark Nebula is just the boss itself is so fucking easy. I remember I was playing this game on an emulator, and it has like pre-built-in cheat codes, and one of the cheat codes was, you know, to give Dark Nebula literally like 10 times as much health. And I was like, that may be the only cheat code that I want to put on the whole fucking game. So that was kind of funny. But yeah, it was really great to go back and do Dark Nebula again. One of the things that I really wanted to do with his theme was to give more time to the Dark Nebula intro theme, which is one of my favorite songs from the game. The Dark Nebula theme itself is really cool, but the intro is the shit. So actually taking that intro and making it part of the boss theme was one thing that I really wanted to do, because those melodies and that build-up is just so fucking cool. I don't know, between all the Morpho Medley tracks, this one was probably one of the easiest ones to make. But yeah, I mean, there's not really much else to say about the musicality of it itself, to be honest with you. Started the artwork. I really love the stuff that he did here. He actually asked me for a recommendation on a comic book to base the intro off of. I'm a big fan of Scott Pilgrim, so I just said Scott Pilgrim. And it looks great. I mean, there's not that much lore behind the Squeaks as far as I know, so the fact that he was able to take this sequence and make something interesting and take up enough time for the intro to play out was pretty cool. But yeah, so he did that. Daroche himself looks awesome. And then we have him possessed by Dark Nebula. And then Jameson did the gameplay edits. He did all of the gameplay edits, and they look awesome. I also really love the stuff that he did with Dark Nebula's theme, so I put the little star over it to kind of represent that. And this movement is something that Star made for me. Star early on made these little jaggedy things on the sidelines for the Morpho Medley, but he also has some that I haven't used very often, where they actually move a little bit. They're kind of wavy. So what I did is I used that one right here, and I just put a kaleidoscope effect over it so that way it looks like a star. There's not that much to say about this track, to be honest with you. So, that's pretty much it. Morpho Medley number 4. So, this was another track that I think kind of represents a step up in terms of the production with the Morpho Medley. I think a lot of that honestly just has to do with Star's artwork. But it was also motivating me to make longer songs. So this one's like 7 minutes long, and that just kind of became almost the standard for a lot of these songs. The original track that this is based on is in the Star Allies soundtrack, and it's literally just called Dark Matter in the Hyperzone. And a lot of the Star Allies songs that play while you're fighting Morpho Knight, depending on the character, are fully fledged medleys. But there are also some tracks that are just kind of generic remixes, and this was one of those tracks. So when we're making a Morpho Medley track and we're kind of faced with that, it's sort of like, now is our opportunity. Now is your chance to, like, make your own medley. So that's what we ended up doing here. So it was really fun. There's a lot of motifs in here. There's a lot of Kirby's Dream Land motifs. There's also a callback to the first Morpho Medley track. But this was a very, very different style than I'm used to. This was actually something a little bit more electronic than I'm used to. This was probably closer to the style of something maybe TNH would make. Although he uses a lot of more dark melodies with his kind of compositional process, which I absolutely love. This was sort of more of a lighthearted type of song. I also took some inspiration from Salvation by Faith Records. So they're a group that does compilation albums from Kirby remixers. It's a Japanese group. I've actually done a couple remixes for some of their albums. So I did 3 songs. One of them is a collab with TNH. It's called Stupid Rat, Beautiful Prison remix. And I did a medley of Vocal Volcano and Mustard Mountain. So I have those 2 on the screen right here. So if you want to check them out, be my guest. But anyway, yeah, it was a very different sound for me, but I think it turned out really well. I was really happy with it. And, you know, it was just another one of those tracks that kind of became more of a celebration of the music rather than trying to depict the intensity of a boss fight or something like that. So, really fun. A lot went into this song. I think one of the things that makes it kind of cool is that it typically maintains its tempo throughout the course of the track, where there's like one exception where it slows down a little bit. But that kind of creates a very coherent, like, smooth feel when it shifts in between all these different parts of the medley, and no transition really feels forced, so that's nice. I'm just going to jump right into talking about the artwork. This is based on Painter C's video called Slime Time, where he has Gooey and the slime from, I think it's Dragon Quest. They're dancing together and they're jamming out. And, you know, there's several things that Star did in some of these videos that are actually sort of inspired by or in reference to some existing Kirby fan videos. And at that point, you know, like, it became more obvious to me that the Morpho Medley is, you know, it's a tribute to the Kirby series, but it's also sort of a tribute to a lot of content creators on the platform. So that is, you know, that's pretty cool. And Painter C also commented on, I think, both this video and also Star's upload of the isolated Dancing Friends clip. So really happy about that. I'm glad they enjoyed it. And they're a really, really awesome content creator. They've also done another video kind of like Slime Time, which was called Clown Town. And it has Marx and Jevel kind of just creating mischief and fucking around. So check that out if you haven't yet. What's really cool is this video actually got tweeted by Pello, Senior Pello. So he's a big fan of Dreamland 3, and he was like, this video is great. And I think Star reached out to him and he was like, I'm gonna look at every video on that person's channel. And I was like, please don't. You know, there's some things that maybe are just best left, you know, forgotten. But anyway, yeah, it was super awesome. I got a little bit of a view spike thanks to him. So really fucking appreciate that. He's a genius. Like, he's an absolute comedic genius. So I'm a huge fan of Pello. After he posted that, I went on another watching spree of Pello's videos. So even if he didn't have an ulterior motive to get another dedicated fan, it definitely worked. Star was really inspired. He did a lot of really great pieces. He did all this stuff in the intro. He has a lot of really great animated pieces. This piece right here I wanted to talk about too, because this is actually done by Noel. And one of the things that's cool is there's 3 versions of this art piece. And it actually slowly shifts in between the 3 on this intro, but you can't really tell. There's one that has a blue background, there's one that has a yellow background, and there's a green background one as well. And the reason why I covered the screen with all this dark matter is because one of those versions doesn't have GUI in it, so I was just kind of hiding that. So there you go. Jameson did the gameplay edits. I also did a couple of the gameplay edits, like the Kirby's Dream Land 2 stuff. I did a lot of that stuff. So it was good to work together with him. I actually, you know, it's not very hard when he does one half and I do the next half, especially when you have a 7-minute video. It's like, it's about time that I fucking pay my respects and, you know, chip in as well for a, you know, contribution in the gameplay edits. So also I got a really nice comment from Meteors on this video as well. So I just wanted to say thank you to him. He's been consistently very supportive of my work, so I really do appreciate that. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I have to say about this track. And at the end, it has a cool little piece that Star did, which I'm not sure if we're going to expand on this, but we actually had an idea of making this particular scene like it's alluding to something that will happen later in the medley. So we'll see. So Newell wrote up a bunch of stuff for his Morpho Medley contributions, so I'm going to share all of those with you right here. Alright, now for Morpho. Simple stuff first. I suggested Reflected Laughter for a Marx motif that got in, and very early on for Megalo I suggested the structure follow a song from Kingdom Hearts 2 called Darkness of the Unknown. If I were to guess, that's probably where the 2 intros for Crowned came from. LOL. As for the big stuff, let's start with the mirror that appeared in Dark Mirage and Translucent Dusk. This was probably the most complex piece I sent to him, involving 4 different separate parts, a set of instructions, and a watermark example video because at the time I hadn't paid for my editing software I use now. Other than that, I liked it. It was used well in the videos, and Translucent Dusk is still my favorite song from this year. Ya boy literally cried to Taranza during a reaction with Light and Star in VC. LMAO. Now, for my favorite piece, and the one I'm most proud of this year, Zero in the Hyperzone made for Morpho number 4, GUI. A remake of a very old piece of mine, and you can tell the drastic glow up it had and how well I was determined to replicate the Dreamland 3 art style. The art process was just pure experimentation that I was really unable to replicate until I did a personal 02 artwork for myself much later in that year. Other than that, there really isn't much to say. 2 dark matters were supposed to appear somewhere in the piece, but I couldn't make it work, so they were scrapped. That should be everything from me, though. Hopefully that wasn't too long-winded. This 2021 was really fun, and I'm very bad at conclusions, so this will be the last thing Light reads. So, dabs. Thanks, Noel. Appreciate you, man. This was a huge project, the Maiden struggle with darkness. So this was another one. I think there were like 3 tracks, maybe, that we started in 2020. They got finished in 2021. This was one of them. So I made this intro piece, it's like the little guitar thing, and then Star listened to it, and he made this awesome little sketch of Adeline, and we thought it was the coolest fucking thing ever. And so that actually, in my opinion, is what kick-started the whole passion project of the Morpho Medley. To me, that moment when I made that piece and Star saw it and he made something based on the little intro was just like, boom, like fireworks going off in my head, like this is gonna be awesome. So it was such a long time in the making, and to me this kind of became almost like an anthem for Star and me to make, you know, the rest of the Morpho Medley. It was like, this song perfectly represents our passion for the project together. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. I got to start off with just talking about the original Maiden Struggle with Darkness on the Star Allies soundtrack. So, in my opinion, the original Maiden Struggle with Darkness medley is probably the best medley in the Star Allies soundtrack. It's so good. It was like, oh my god, like, how can I make this better in a remix? It's like perfect, basically, in the way that it is. But you know, I love the fact that it has the Miracle Matter theme, and then it goes off and does some stuff with the Ripple Star theme, and then it goes back to the Miracle Matter theme. To me, that's the coolest fucking thing ever. But anyway, yeah, I just love it. When I was remixing it, the composition of the original was so good that just through the nature of, you know, recomposing it and using my own instrumentation, it just sounded good. Like right out of the gate, it was like, okay, I don't even really need to do that much with this song because it's already such a good composition that it doesn't need to be changed. It's pretty much perfect the way it is, and the fact that I'm using more synth and guitar and stuff like that gives my version its own identity. It doesn't even need to necessarily be better or worse. It's just different enough, you know, that it kind of justifies its own existence. There's a few motifs here that appear that weren't part of the original, but I think this particular Morpho Medley track actually ended up being more of a focus on, you know, what can I do with the melodies that are in this remix already, and, you know, kind of represent them in a really unique way. So the biggest thing, there's two parts in here that I think really exemplify, you know, the personality of the track. And this is the first one, the one that you're looking at right here. And you know what I'm going to talk about. So, I got to mention something first. When I was working on this remix, I got everything done, and I was creating the video, and I had Jameson's gameplay edits in the video. I had, you know, Star's artwork, and I had my music done. So I was just putting everything out in the video in an order of appearance, and I was probably 70% done with the video. But I was using a external hard drive, and there was something wrong with the cable that was going into the hard, like it was kind of fucked up, like it was bent, and it was kept detaching, and eventually it detached, and when I reattached it, it was just completely corrupted, and I basically lost like all my files. I was able to salvage some, but the whole video basically got fucked. I still had all the assets that Jameson and Star made, but I was really upset about it. And so in order to make me feel better, Star actually was like, okay, well, we're going to take some extra time for this video anyway, so how about I make you some new pieces? So he made this little thing of Ribbon playing the keyboard, and he also made Adeline doing a fucking solo on the guitar. So if the video hadn't been fucked up, and if the hard drive hadn't erased everything, you wouldn't even have this section of the song. In fact, the original version of this music didn't even have the solo, and you can hear the original version on Ultimate's extension on his channel. I'll actually just play that for you right now. So that's what it sounded like on the original before it got this sort of fresh new coat of paint. So after Star made this art piece with Ribbon and Adeline playing the guitar, I specifically dedicated these two pieces of music to those characters, and I kind of wrote them in a way where I was like, I can, you know, use them in conjunction with the animation. So this ended up turning into one of the best parts of the whole Morpho Medley, in my opinion, right here. And this melody that's actually being played by Ribbon and Adeline is not in the original Maiden Struggle with Darkness. It's actually from the original Kirby 64-02 theme, and it's the last part before the loop. It's only a couple seconds long, but I repeat it several times here because I'm using it in conjunction with a bunch of really weird chords that just so happened to coincidentally work. It was literally an accident. So, here you go. So there you go. And on top of that, Jameson made this little gameplay edit snippet right here that I really wanted to talk about. So this part is what he considers to be maybe one of his best edits of all time, and I can certainly see why. So there's a little part at the end here where I make a callback to the little intro melody. He puts all the different versions of the Dark Matter characters over it, and it's just so fucking cool that I basically wanted to give it full screen time. I actually made a whole nother section to this track because I wanted to have a place for Star's artwork, but I also wanted this part to be specifically dedicated to Jameson's gameplay edit. So check it out. Oh my god. You know, I want to make a point in saying this because I might not talk about his gameplay edits as much in some of the other videos, but Jameson has been one of the most important people that I have ever had the opportunity of working with, because I don't know how other people feel about these gameplay edits, but for me, when I started doing them, the first time I ever did them was actually in the Kirby and the Amazing Mirror Medley, but it became this cool thing because it's like, I'm not doing a performance, you know, like, I need to give the viewer something really fun to look at, and having these gameplay edits really accentuates certain points in the music, especially when you have it hitting on like a hard note. So it's really important for me to have that. It adds such, you know, a powerful effect to the music actually delivering certain parts when you're creating tension and stuff like that. So having Jameson able to listen to the song and accentuate certain parts of the music, I mean, he's not only has he provided, you know, a great resource for me because I don't have to sit there and do literally hours and hours and hours and hours of work, but he also gives the song its identity in a different way that maybe I didn't hear it before, and he's been getting better and better and better. Like, seriously, he's worked with me, he's worked with DeSolo, he's worked with TNH. Some of his best gameplay edits are in TNH's recent Nightmare remix. If you want to see Jameson at his absolute best, you got to see that. It's amazing. But I just, you know, I can't even begin to tell you how grateful I am for Jameson's help. Like, it literally it's so special to me because I literally started doing these, and I was literally had this thought. I was like, oh my god, I wish I didn't have to do this. Like, I love the effect that having these gameplay edits in the video does for the music, but it's such a time-consuming process. I wish I had somebody to do this for me, and literally nobody else was doing this. So to have him come on after watching the Soul Melter medley and offer to help me with this is just unbelievable. Like, I could go on forever, but I just wanted to say that here. But anyway, more nerding out for you. I guess that's kind of the whole point of the video, right? As far as the artwork goes, this was some of my favorite stuff that Star did. He actually has another version of this intro as well that he didn't end up using. It's super cool. I'll show it for you right here. But yeah, he has the intro with some of the lore being referenced with Shiver Star, kind of referencing Planet Robobot as well. Really, really cool stuff. And then he also has Ripple Star, you know, covered in dark matter. And I really love this piece of Adeline that he did. The texture is super duper cool. He has the little black thing scrolling across the screen. This particular illustration with Miracle Matter is really cool because it's so high resolution. He has the little animated background right here that he did as well. He did all of these sketches. He has a Ripple Star in the background. You know, in these two parts, he actually has the black thing scrolling across the screen diagonally and then in a circular motion, and he has an animated ribbon, animated Adeline right there. There's these two parts that I already talked about. He has so many different iterations of this particular version of 02. Like, if you were to actually look at all the files for the different faces that are shown here, there's a lot. And then he has the final piece, which is 02 transforming into what I believe is the different versions of the bosses across the Kirby series and how they're technically some form of evil Kirby. I don't really know all the details, but, you know, again, his contribution to the series is unsurpassed. And also, this was a point in the series when he started to do more and more and more and more for each video, and it just basically hasn't stopped since. So, thank you, Star. And that's about all I have to say about the Maiden struggle with dorkness. Since this episode of the Morpho Medley was so affected by Jameson's amazing gameplay edits, I figured now would be a good time to share his written piece for the behind the scenes video. So he said, "Yo, it's the editor extraordinaire, Jameson Moselle. I'm the guy who does the edits you see in the Morpho Medley. I want to go over a few things such as the edits and what I did for some and my favorite part in the Morpho Medley. Episode 1, 2, and 3 were pretty much made blindly with no studying, which rarely happens. Turns out episode 3's Dark Nebula section was the first time I ever edited Dark Nebula's theme. And that goes to show you that most of these songs he's edited several times before. Episode 4 and 5 is where you see less of me, but I made sure the parts I played a role in were my best. Actually, episode 5 has the single best part in the entire Morpho Medley, that being the outro. Let's talk about that for a second. The outro to 02 was so good that Light actually extended the outro. He didn't want to cut that part out because it showed every version of dark matter ever in an emotional fashion. That part is still my favorite part in the entire Morpho Medley, and perhaps it could be hinting at something else. As for episode 9, I rarely edit songs with lyrics. That's Translucent Dusk, but it was a fun challenge. If I ever remake it, I'll be sure to edit the clips based on the lyrics. If you haven't noticed, between episode 1 of the Morpho Medley to Nightmare RX, which is TNH Game Remixes Nightmare Remix, to recently Absolute Configuration, which is an anime cover that we did recently, my editing has gotten way better and more smooth. I can't really explain it, but if you have been watching my edits closely, you'll notice the changes. You definitely will. I also upload the raw, uncut Morpho Medley edits to my channel. Sometimes they have early versions of the track. Don't worry, most of the tracks will get their full versions in the future. Thanks so much, Jameson. I said it 100,000 times, but you really are one of the most important assets on my channel. I really appreciate everything that you do. So this was another track in the medley that it was the Star Allies version of Marx was just kind of a generic remix. So we had just got done with Maiden Struggle with Darkness, and that was like a long form medley. So, and before that we did Dark Matter and the Hyperzone, which is also 7 minutes long. So it was like, okay, we need something different. We can't just have another long ass song. So what we did here, and I think it's kind of reflective in the visuals and in the music, is an attitude of concentrated intensity. So it's only about 4.5 minutes long, which is, you know, for normal remixes, relatively long, but for the Morpho Medley is pretty short. It was a little bit more focused. It didn't really deviate and go into a bunch of different stuff musically. One of the things that I wanted to do going into this was I wanted to have my own little improvised sections with weird time signatures, because that's the whole thing with the Marx theme, is it doesn't really have a coherent time signature. So I did that a little bit. Also, it was Star's idea to have the Milky Way Wishes intro theme, and so at the beginning you have this kind of fun guitar sort of techno thing going on. So that is hinting at the Milky Way Wishes intro theme, and then at the very end of the song, it basically resolves. So I love doing stuff like that. You know, that's about all I have to really say about the music itself. There's a couple motifs in there, so there's grape gardens, but the only reason I really did that was just because there's some melodic similarities between one of the parts in Marx and one of the parts in Grape Gardens, and there's also, you know, some minor references to Taking Over the Halberd, the boss theme from Kirby's Superstar, and also Reflected Laughter was a recommendation from Noel, so that got put in here as well, so that was pretty fun. But yeah, as far as the visuals go, so Star did all kinds of stuff with the visuals. So this intro has so many different things happening. So there's like 3 different iterations of the sky. There's the blue sky, there's the evening sky, and there's the night sky. And then the characters have different lighting on them, I believe. There's also like some stuff, some grass that appears in front of Kirby's feet that's sort of, it's a shadow. And there's also, what do they call that? The lens flare appearing on the left and the right sides of the screen. So this intro was actually very difficult to do. Star walked me through the process, but it looks fantastic. You know, one of the things that I love so much about the way that he does his artwork is kind of something that I like to do with my music as well, is he'll find attributes of the character that it's based on or attributes of the music, and he'll try to focus on those and just make them as extravagant as possible. So in this particular video, it was making something kind of disturbing and threatening, and so he did a lot of stuff like that, like this little animation here, which I love so much. And so a lot of attacks based on the ones from Smash Ultimate. And he also has this little piece that he did, which I think is so fucking cool. He also did the outro with Mark's soul dying, which you got to have that in there. That's one of the coolest things in the whole series. And then he's got Galactanova. Really, really, really awesome video in terms of the visuals that Star provided. I just love all this stuff. I really like the little laser transition that he did as well. It's really cool because it happens on a really good transitional point in the music as well. so you can't really see it here, but this laser, when it opens up, so this whole opening right here was a green screen, so he just drew it in green, so that way I could green screen it out and have it bring up the next scene. But yeah, Jameson did the gameplay edits for this. I really love what he did with the Smash Ultimate parts, and also this part right here is a really great gameplay edit. So that's pretty cool. And I think I did a couple points in the gameplay edits as well. I did some of this stuff, so we worked together a little bit. It's definitely a different track for the Morpho Medley. I also got an email from somebody who watched this, who I think grew up with Superstar Ultra, ? They really just extended their gratitude for the video, and it made my day, absolutely made my day. So I just wanted to say thank you to that person. It was a really, really sweet email. So, yeah, that was Marx. Dun 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 ba bum. So, right out of the gate, do you know what that sound effect is right there? I'm pretty sure that shh thing is a reversed version of the glass mirror shattering sound effect in the game when you kill Dark Midnight. Pretty cool, huh? So, Dork Massage, there's a lot to cover here. This was a very weird video. This one has a very different feel to it than most of the other videos in the Morpho Medley. So first of all, Dark Mirage, it's very hard for me not to say Dork Massage now that I've been saying it so much, is a really cool medley from Kirby Star Allies. And it's kind of interesting because it's made to play during the fight between Dark Midnight and Morpho Knight, but it actually does not have Dark Midnight's theme. It has the boss battle theme from Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, and it also has Dark Mind Phase 2, which is, it's not actually Phase 2. It's really weird because, I mean, you could call it Phase 2 if you count like all 4 or 5 battles with the blue demon Dark Mind as Phase 1. I don't know. It's kind of weird and confusing. But anyway, the point is, it's a pretty interesting medley. And, you know, it has some different characteristics than the original songs. And it's based on specifically Dark Mind is much faster than it was in the original. So this is basically like a small version of the Kirby and the Amazing Mirror medley, but it's very different because it also has a lot of stage themes from Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. We have, at the beginning, there's Rainbow Route, and it's the dark or Shadow Kirby version of Rainbow Route from Kirby Fighters. So then it goes into the boss battle theme, then it goes into Dark Mind, then it goes into Olive Ocean, then it goes into Candy Constellation, then it goes into Dark Midnight, then it ends on Moonstruck Blossom / Candy Constellation / Rainbow Route / Moonstruck Blossom. So there you go. There's your convoluted, timeline of all the tracks that made an appearance in this little medley. It was kind of weird. It was one of those tracks again where it was just sort of like a bunch of puzzle pieces that I made, a bunch of sections like, I'm going to do a remix of Olive Ocean. Okay, great. I'm going to do a remix of the boss battle theme. And now I have all these segments of the track, and I'm like, how is this supposed to make sense? You know, how could I lead this part into this part? Maybe this part would go better over here. That's pretty much the bulk of how this came together. And it was actually supposed to end right after this part. So Noel made this little art piece, and he suggested that we end on Moonstruck Blossom. But then Star ended up making a whole new section with the visuals, which this is just like one of my favorite scenes from the whole series. I don't know why, but this scene is beautiful. But this shot right here, I just don't know why, but there's something so special about this shot right here. I love this shot. I absolutely love that. It's so beautiful. It was kind of, you know, it's one of those medleys where it's just kind of a lot of random stuff kind of happening. So, I mean, in hindsight, Maybe I would have liked to have touched on maybe 1 or 2 more stage themes or something like that, just so I could give it more of a cohesive identity, because right now it's just sort of like a lot of stuff, random stuff from Amazing Mirror, and I think it turned out well, but it was like, there's certain aspects of it that maybe could have been expanded upon, like the Dark Midnight remix. For instance, when I did the original Kirby and the Amazing Mirror medley back in 2016, I want to say, it was a little bit more involved. And one of the things that I did is I actually made a sort of custom boss theme for the false Dark Midnight, also known as question mark, question mark, question mark. And I was going to remake that theme for Dark Mirage, but I ended up cutting it because, I mean, at this point, the track was already, how long is it? It's about 6 minutes. And I didn't want to dedicate a whole minute and a half to some reference that people might not even recognize. So I told this to Ultimate, and Ultimate does a lot of extensions of the Morpho Medley tracks, and what he'll do is he'll find unused sections of the Morpho Medley tracks, and he'll reintegrate them into the song. So I let him know that I had an unfinished question mark, question mark, question mark remix, and he said very kindly, you will give me the fucking remix right this second, or else I will come to your house and I will find you. He didn't threaten my life at all, but he was very excited about potentially having the question mark, question mark, question mark remix. I'm paraphrasing. I was like, it's not finished. It doesn't sound very good. You know, it was maybe like 3 or 4 tracks. There weren't any drums or anything like on it. It was just a couple different instruments playing a rough recreation of the melody. So I was like, you know what, man? Let me redo the whole thing. So I just recently remade question mark, question mark, question mark. I'm going to play you a little snippet from it here, and I'm going to give you a full version of it in the Google Drive that I will link in the description. So I hope you enjoy that. And I don't mean to make fun of Ultimate too much. He does amazing extensions. He does really, really cool renders of like 3D graphics and stuff like that. He's been, you know, he's almost like the ideal viewer for me too, because he knows kind of my history with motifs and stuff like that and how to properly reference them in some of his extensions. So I really like the kind of creative control that he has when he does extensions of the Morpho Medley, and the fact that he kind of puts, you know, more diversification in each of the loops by incorporating old versions of the mix and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much all I have to say about the music. So Star did a lot of art pieces. Visually, this might be one of my favorite videos that Star did. I recently, I hadn't watched this one in a while, and I remember watching this intro and being like, damn, Star did a lot of really beautiful stuff for this intro right here. He actually totally animated this. So a lot of the time when he sends me stuff, he'll have me animate it, but this he did all on his own. Looks great. He actually, I'm going to pause it right here. He had me make sure that this sword slash lined up with the music. So that's pretty cool. Then he's got all the different backgrounds scrolling there from the different parts of the game. He's got Dark Midnight, so he gave me all the different assets, like the wings and the sword, and I had them kind of moving in a way to create an effective animation. With Dark Mind, he has a lot of different versions of the fiery ball that it's kind of scrolling in between, so it looks like it's moving texture. Then he has the different walking Kirbys right here, so he did different colors of all those. Something kind of funny is that there's only one squishy in the whole game. So as kind of a joke, he had me put in one squishy at the top of the screen. And something funny about this is I actually re-uploaded the whole video because I ended up somehow accidentally cutting off Squishy's right tentacle. It's funny how much of a perfectionist I am, and then I still end up misspelling Profascia Gaming in the intro or whatever. Anyway. But yeah, he didn't, as always, I mean, does his art need any introduction? He did an amazing job. And then Noel did these pieces at the end here, like I mentioned. And then literally the only reason why I have another Candy Constellation melody is because I couldn't find a good place for these Candy Constellation backgrounds that Star made. Also, these little head Kirby things appearing in the corners and stuff, that is actually based on an old Japanese, like, there's some, like, art program, I think it was on the DSi, where you could draw stuff in a particular style and make little animations off of it, and that is based on a little Japanese animation that somebody did with the Candy Constellation music in the background. So, another thing that Star did to pay tribute to the community of Kirby content creators. That's quite a tongue twister. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say about this one. It was great to allude to Translucent Dusk here at the end as well, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, and Jameson's gameplay edits, which were really good. So I would encourage you to check out his original uploads of some of these edits, because I ended up repurposing some of the edits, and this stuff in the background right here is not really visible. So if you want to see that in all its glory, I'd recommend checking out his channel. Let me see if I can find exactly what it's called. It's called Dancing with Darkness. So that is where you can find the original gameplay edit that he did for this video. I think this was all him. I think he did everything for the gameplay edits here. I provided him with some of my beautiful gameplay of me playing Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. I mean, you can just tell that I am a speedrun. Do you see how I was going exactly straight for the spikes right there, and he cut it right before I hit them? I mean, that's pretty amazing gameplay right there. So thanks, Jameson, for saving my image and not ramming into the fucking spikes in tandem with the music. Wouldn't that be funny? To have like there, I got whacked by the shot, so you could have me literally getting hit to the music. But anyway, yeah, good stuff. Crowning of the Supreme Meme, which is actually what I was gonna title this video for like 1 second, and then everyone was gonna get notified, and then they're gonna enter the video and be like, what the hell just happened? And then I would erase it, but I decided not to do that. So, missed opportunity, I know. So there's a lot going on here. The original Crowning of the Supreme King is another medley from Star Allies that is really, really good. The only thing that is maybe a little lackluster about it, which I didn't even notice, Parapsych actually pointed this out to me, is that the instrumentation of the crown segment of the track is like almost identical to the original. It's almost like they just pulled the project file of the old mix back in for this medley in Star Allies, and they were just like, there we go. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, doing this particular medley and sort of roughly basing it off of that version, there was a lot of ground to cover, and there's a lot of stuff that I wanted to do. I wanted to make a callback to TNH's Crown remix because it is just absolutely phenomenal. And then I also referenced a bunch of stuff that I've done in the past. I referenced Forever Stained from the Sketch soundtrack. I referenced Halberd Annihilation, which was one of my first quote-unquote original Kirby tracks that I ever did. And then there's all those motifs within Crowning of the Supreme King, like the Dangerous Dinner thing at the beginning. So we touched on so much. There's also the reference to the Kirby GameCube theme at the beginning, which also comes back at the end. It's just like a fucking soup of motifs in this song. So I can't even begin to go into everything that's happening here, but I'm going to touch on some interesting things. So musically, it was quite a process. It was difficult to make sure everything flows into, you know, the next section as smoothly as possible. And there's still a lot to be desired in terms of that. There's a lot of parts of the Morpho Medley that I think maybe certain sections could use a smoother transition, and that's something that I've consistently struggled with. But in my case, when I do something like this, what I like to do is I like to sit down, make about 1 minute of the song. I'll just be like, okay, I want to do this part. I want to reference this, so I'm going to make this whole segment right here, and then I'll come back and I'll do it again. I'll do the next thing. I'll do that, blah, 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 blah. And I'll incrementally start knocking out the sections of the track that I want to finish. It's almost like you're writing a storyline, and you have all these plot points that you want to get to. When you have the plot points in front of you, but they're not in order, it's actually almost easier sometimes to make it a little bit smoother in your creation rather than just creating it from start to finish. Because then you know what points you want to hit on, and then you know how to hint at them coming up to that point. You know what's going to sound redundant. So maybe if I have this part that references Sky Tower here, I'm going to wait 4 or 5 minutes, have a bunch of other stuff in the track, and then I'm going to come back to Sky Tower at a later point. So that's what I did in this song. It's a cool way to compose. The most difficult thing about it is exactly what I said, where it's just a matter of making sure that those segments that you create are linked up to each other in a way that doesn't feel forced. There was at least one time in this medley when I was like, okay, this part's going to come next, and then I got done with a different part. I'm like, okay, I want that part to appear here. So it's just, it's all about trial and error, and the most annoying thing is having to write a whole new section in order to link the parts. That just, that takes way longer than necessary. And that's something that I am having to do a lot of in the Kirby's Adventure medley. So now knowing that, I'm setting myself up to not have to do that in the future. So just, a pointer from a guy who's been remixing for a long time, or when you're trying to make any kind of long form song, it's good to keep that in mind. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say about the musical portion of the track, I guess. There was one major thing that was cut from the track that was just completely random, and I cut it for very obvious reasons. So there's a part in this song, I'll play it for you. It's got this big dramatic build up. I just listened to that in the original, and there's a game called Sword of Mana, and it's based on Final Fantasy Adventure. And the final boss theme of that game has this progression that sounds very similar to that. And when I was making the first version of this remix, I literally just did that part of the song from Final Fantasy Adventure / Sword of Mana and put it in the remix. So let me show you the similarities. So that was just some really fucking funny thing that I ended up doing, and I cut it because it had no point to be in the song. So it was just kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. As far as the artwork goes, so Star this was one of the times when he just had an ungodly number of art pieces that he did for the video. He has all these kind of comic book-esque intros. He has the idle animation here. This little screen is one of my favorite visual things that we did for the whole series. This was super cool. So it was his idea to have the little magic symbol like sort of bouncing in tandem with the beat of the song. It just looks really, really cool. So he also has a little transitional dragon guy. He has Megalo Phase 1, who's actually based on the Megalo from TNH's video, but he looks way creepier here. Megalo Phase 2, also based on the TNH video. He has these pieces, there's the little intermission section with the backstory of the magic users that got banished. Galactonite. He's got the little text, which is a language from the Kirby series or whatever. It's just, I mean, there's probably even more than that. There's like little animations that he does for the crown segment, like him growing into Phase 2 Magolor right there. Not only does he do all these pieces, but he also has animations in mind for so many of them. So he is planning all this out as he's making the art pieces, and as we incrementally move through the phases, he gives me pointers on how to animate it properly. And, you know, you could green screen this, or you could do this, or have this kind of movement here, or maybe you could bring this back at this point. It's just like, there's so much that goes into the visuals. I would say that on average, the video portion of it sometimes takes longer than the musical portion of making the song. So, pretty interesting. So, really, really great medley. I was super happy with the way that this came out. There's a couple things in the mix that I think could have been a little bit better, and some transitions, and maybe a couple notes that sound a little bit weird, but when it's a 10-minute song, it's just so hard to keep track of everything. But anyway, aside from that, I was pretty happy with it. And Jameson did the gameplay edits. I did a few gameplay edits in here as well. I also repurposed some of his gameplay edits, like this part, some of the parts nearing the end when it has the arena. He actually made those for the intro section, but Star made a bunch of artwork, so I took his edit and I just put it way over here instead, and it actually worked out fine because it has the same tempo as the beginning of the track. So yeah. Translucent Duck. So this was a track that I was so excited about. This is the problem with planning stuff in advance, is that, like, you know, I talked to Ray about doing potentially some vocals for a track in the Morpho Medley a long time before we got to this one. And she was like, yeah, I'll do Moonstruck because there's technically already vocals on it, so it makes the most sense. We were going through the Morpho Medley. We did, you know, 1, 2, and 3, and I was just, like, thinking about this song. I was like, I just want to get to this point. And that can be a little bit of a problem because, you know, when you're so fixated on one thing that you want to do, everything else kind of becomes an afterthought, and you don't enjoy it and all this stuff. But that wasn't the case. I enjoyed every video thoroughly, and once you actually get into the, you know, meat and potatoes of it, you realize that every part of this process has a really important part to play. So all that aside, Translucent Dusk is based on Phantom of the Moon Spirit from the Star Allies soundtrack, and that is a beautiful medley in the Star Allies soundtrack. I'm a little bit critical of some of the songs in the Star Allies soundtrack, but that medley in particular is really, really good. So this got a new title because it really has its own identity. It has some elements from that. It has other elements from maybe the original Moonstruck Blossom, or, you know, A World to Win or whatever, that didn't carry over into Phantom of the Moon Spirit. I'm not even totally sure. I can't even remember all the motifs and exactly their origins that ended up in this, because it was such a long process. Actually, the very first version of the song got started in early 2020. So this was like a year and a half in the making. But it went through so many different iterations. Yeah, so I have so much I want to say about the vocal track, but I got to start with the instrumental. And the visuals obviously are amazing. To begin with, I had to make a little piano piece. So the whole medley in its entirety in a piano kind of MIDI format. I sent it to Ray. I had the lead vocal melody be a flute, really cheesy synth flute, and then she wrote the lyrics around that melody. So then after that, she sent me the vocal track, and I made the rest of the instrumental. Over the course of the time that this was developed, I went through so many different sound changes with my style, and I had access to all these different plugins. It was actually very difficult to write the piano piece because just like with the Spamton medley, I wanted this to be a cohesive musical storyline. I wanted it to be kind of contained within itself, because it's one thing when you have a medley where it's like, okay, you know, this track, that track, this motif, blah, 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 and then it ends. It's like, oh, wow, that was a lot of information. But when you have a medley that hits on certain notes, draws back on those notes, kind of references some other stuff, and then it has, you know, kind of a bookend where it closes the gap between, you know, the beginning and the end. That, to me, is the most powerful way to write a medley. And also, if somebody's not as familiar with the soundtrack and they're listening to the medley, it makes more sense for them too, because, you know, it has certain attributes that appear and reappear, and it's not just a mishmash of random shit, which can be great. It can be great, like, depending on how you do it. Any way to do it can be a really effective way to do it. But, you know, that's why this song got its own title, was because I wanted it to have a musical identity. And it also kind of has Ray capitalize on some of her writing, because she was able to draw and reference certain points of writing at later points in the track as well. So, yeah, that was kind of the idea behind Translucent Dusk. I was really struggling with mixing at this point in time, because I was using a really kind of loud drum sound for a lot of the mixes. This was one of the mixes that I thought turned out really, really well. I had a little bit of experience with mixing vocals. Like, I have not worked with vocalists very much at all, which I'm very sad about. I absolutely love working with vocalists. Going into this and trying to mix Ray's vocals with everything else was a little bit challenging, because what I had to do a lot of the time is cut the lead melody out to leave room for her vocals. And you might think that it would sound good with the lead melody and the vocals in tandem with each other, but it's more often than not, it's just distracting. There are a couple points when the lead is playing along with her vocals, like the section right here, the Moonstruck part. But there's a lot of really powerful songs that have beautiful instrumentals, but the problem is that not everything is audible. You can have a guitar playing with a vocal track, and the thing is, the guitar has so many scratchy sounds to it that it can actually mask some of the consonants that's being sung by the vocalist, and you can't understand what they're saying. So despite the fact that I knew we were going to have vocals written across the screen, I still wanted everyone to be able to hear the vocal track. So one of the things that I did that was actually very weird is I used a lot of mid tones when I was mixing Ray's vocals. I put a lot of effects over it as well, but her consonants and things like S's and stuff like that are actually not as loud as some of the low tones, because it actually cuts through all the other instruments. You can hear her vocal melody much clearer because it has almost more of a softer sound to it. And I think that complements her performance really well. So there's just so much that I wanted to say about this. There's so many melodies and motifs that got referenced here, but I don't really think it's possible for me to capitalize on everything unless I sit down for, like, you know, 45 minutes. I was going to say 20 minutes, but it's probably going to be 20 minutes. There were a lot of things that were cut from the remix. There were multiple sections. The old version of the mix is very different. I'll include those in the description. I also have a little Dirty and Beauty section that I ended up cutting that was actually pretty cool, but it's a little bit in its rough form. I'll actually play it for you here so you can hear it. So there's a couple motifs that are in this track that are actually a callback to some of my old remixes. So the most obvious one is this melody right here that Ray sings over the top of after it plays it with the brass. Oh my god, I can't even listen to this part of the song without getting emotional now. Ray's performance and her writing in tandem with Donut's backing vocals, it's just completely unbelievable. Like, this part right here just gives me fucking goosebumps. Oh my god. So I talked a little bit before about my vocal plugin. It's called East West Hollywood Vocals, and you can write phrases for it to sing. It's a little bit wonky to use, but at the very end here, when Ray sings "All that is imperfect shall cease," when it says imperfect and shall cease, you can actually hear the choir singing that along with her if you listen very closely. So there's a interesting little fun fact. Okay, so another thing that was a reference to one of my old remixes that I don't think that many people picked up on because it's a lot more subtle is the guitar solo right here, actually. So yeah, that's from the intro to Moonstruck Blossom in my old 2016 Queen Suctonia medley. So there you go. So the only other thing before I move on to like the vocals and the visuals is Noel watched this song when we premiered it in VC, and he was crying, and it was amazing and hilarious, and I will play that for you now.
Oh, my dearest flower, I gave you all you were after. Can you forgive me? What are these hollow kisses of foiling? Recognizing, oh my star, my lovely universe.
Fucking hell, man.
Thanks, Noel, for letting me make fun of you, and also thanks for bearing your heart and soul in front of us. I thought that was pretty amazing. Obviously, it's, you know, the whole point of making music like this is to get that kind of reaction out of the listener, especially when you have somebody who's dealing with this kind of sadness and having them have it reflected back to them as basically, you know, you're not alone. That's what music is all about as far as I'm concerned. So I wanted to mention Ray's vocals. So before we get into it, she has a little recording that she did where she talks about her writing. And before we get to that, I just wanted to say kind of outline exactly how much work she did for this video, because it has to be known. It is just completely unbelievable. So, first of all, how long is a song? When you turn on the radio, it's probably like 3, 4, maybe 5 minutes long. So you're writing lyrics to a song that's that long. Now, when you're writing lyrics, a lot of the time these songs have a verse-chorus structure. So it has one melody that plays, then it has a chorus, so a different melody, then it goes back to the same verse melody, then the same chorus. And what they'll do is they'll write different lyrics for each verse, but a lot of the times the chorus will stay the same, maybe with tiny alterations. So you're not actually writing that many lyrics. For Ray in this video, she wrote lyrics for an 8-minute song. Not only that, there is like almost no verse chorus structure. So there's like almost nothing that's repeating. There are some melodies that are repeating, but they oftentimes have a different tail on the end of them, or maybe there's slightly different. Like, it's crazy. If you actually look at all the lyrics written out on a piece of paper in front of you, you'll be like, oh my God, that's a lot. Not only that, but she had to write lyrics within the confines of the melody that I gave her. Not only that, she had to write lyrics that represented the circumstances of the game themselves. Not only that, but she had to use wordplay and stuff like that in order to create a beautiful poetic sound to it without it being too obvious. I heard her vocals on some tracks that she did for Spotify, and I really, really wanted her writing to get the spotlight on this video because it's so good. Like, between her and so many other people who write music for, or write lyrics for video game tracks and even like anime tracks and stuff, a lot of the time it comes out really cheesy. And I love cheesy music. I love stuff like that. I'm a huge fan of Crush 40. But when you have something like this, there's just like, oh my God, like I was so happy with everything that she did with this. So anyway, I just wanted to nerd about that for a little bit. I also wanted to mention Donut's vocals during this section right here. Donut was somebody who Ray suggested to do vocals, and I wasn't familiar with them, and I didn't hear any pieces of music that they did, and they were a little bit nervous about producing a vocal track for the song. But then when I actually heard the final cut, I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. So just wanted to throw that out there. I think there were some people who thought that was kind of the shining point of the whole song, so major props to Donut. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say about the music and the vocals. Now I just wanted to talk about the artwork. What is there to say about the artwork? Like, Jesus, is so much going on here. So, just like me, Star had been planning this one for a very long time, and he had a lot of ideas about how he thought it should be. So he had a bunch of sketches that he made and a bunch of ideas about what kind of scenes he wanted to depict, and every time I saw them, I was just like, oh my God, this is going to be unbelievable. I don't even know where to begin. So he did all these pieces. He did over 100 pieces for the video. He did this little thing right here, and that turns into, Shadow DDD. He has all this stuff here. If you look in the background at this part, you can actually see the different body parts from Sectonia before she transformed. He came up with the idea of reusing Noel's piece from the Dark Mirage video. I love the Tyranza idol animation that he did. The eyes are really cool. My favorite scene in the whole video is this scene right here. When he came up with this idea, I was like, are you kidding me? This is just ridiculous. So he has Tyranza reminiscing about, his time with his girlfriend, and then it turns out that he's just looking at the water and she's gone and he's all by himself. And the little ripple effect is literally his tears hitting the water when it makes the transition. So that was a scene that he had planned out for a long time, And I couldn't believe it when I saw it. I couldn't believe it, how depressing and amazingly awesome that was. Like, I was like, oh my god, dude. What else does he have? He has the amazing mirror here. He has it blowing up. And then I actually asked him to make these pieces at the end. He kept asking me, he's like, do you have any ideas for this video? Do you want anything done? I'll do it if you have any ideas. And I was like, okay, how about this scene? So you have all the memories of Tyranza with his girlfriend, and then you have the amazing mirror, and then it shatters, and then the video ends, basically. So those are all super duper beautiful. And then he also did the flower blooming at the end. So just unbelievable. Like, I've said it before, but the Morpho Medley was actually Star's idea. He just randomly was like, hey, how about we remix, like, I think it might have even been like half jokingly. It's like, let's remix all the medleys from Star Allies. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So he's been absolutely dedicated to the cause ever since. And this is a perfect, testament to that fact. And also I want to point out that I'm not commissioning him. I'm not paying him for this stuff. I've offered, to support him, and that is still out there. Seriously, dude, like, anytime that you need that, I'd be really happy to chip in. But this amount of work that he's done for this series is just, unsurmountable. So anyway, I think that's all I have to really say about Tridental. That actually ended up being a lot shorter than I thought. I thought I was going to be talking about this for like an hour. But yeah, I was going to say this is the last time I'll ever remix Moonstruck Blossom, but it's not. Because there is going to be a callback to this medley on the final track of the Morpho Medley. And I've actually already made that part of the medley when I'm recording this. So it's pretty cool. I think you'll like it a lot. Donut, who did the voice for Tyranza in this medley, has also written up a little piece about their experience singing. So here it is. So honestly, I was really hesitant when Ray first asked me to help with vocals for this project. I hadn't seriously sung in a while, and almost always kept it to memes or joke songs. That way, if it was bad, I could play it off. But after being gassed up, I figured why not? Especially since I got to voice one of my favorite Kirby characters. I attempted many, many times to get my part done, despite it being pretty short. Especially after hearing some of what Ray was doing, felt I really needed to try and make something special. Debated with different character voices, different ranges, etc. Eventually I decided to forgo all the crazier ideas and just shot light a few ideas that I thought could maybe work. And it turns out the team really loved the performance, which was a huge relief. The team was super supportive and propped me up a lot, despite being such a small part of the project. And it was an awesome experience. It's actually gotten me excited and hoping to do other music projects in the future. And seeing all the positive comments we've gotten, I'm really happy I decided to partake. Yes, Ray has, done an absolutely incredible job with all of her contributions, but there's a lot of people who were floored by Donut's performance, particularly. So I just, really appreciate you, and I have my plate full, but at some time in the future, Donut, if you want to work with me again, I would absolutely love it. So thank you so much.
So basically, I was given a MIDI file with a vocal line, and I just had to go off of Triple Deluxe's story of the Mirror, Sectonia, Tyranza, all of that. There were a lot of themes that I tried to incorporate into the lyrical composition, and some of those were definitely plants, because, Triple Deluxe is all about plants. Purity, kind of this religion kind of esque type thing, like something about being pure, something about being tainted, something about being vain, and another thing that I included was kind of thinking like, what is perfection exactly? and that things can be far more corrupt than what they seem at first. I think writing about Sectonia's descent into madness was very fun. I think a lot of the lyrics that I did write for it was, I thought they were really good. I liked them a lot. I liked how they turned out. I especially tried to make sure that parts that were bigger and bolder and more full kind of reflected going fully mad, if that makes sense. Like, the very high part at the beginning, like, beauty consume, morality and sorrow, beauty consume, like, it's all so just grand. It's very grand, and it's just this madness that's kind of speaking through Sectonia. As she grows into something that she can't even recognize herself, she doesn't recognize her surroundings either. It's big, and every time there was something that involved that big, full opera voice, I kind of tried to make it something, that was more heartless. Very heartless. Very, like, you are at your peak descent. You can't recognize anything around you, and you are not yourself. You are almost animalistic, in a sense. So another part that is like that is the part after Donut's part, which is Almighty Moonstruck, Florets, no blossom, overtake all that dares, contest my reign of beauty. Like, that type of thing is just, you're just crazy. Sectonia is not Sectonia anymore. And especially during that part, I really thought that it was super, just impactful to have Donut's line, Tyranza's line of mourning under this heartless belt that is just Sectonia's insanity, saying, oh, everything, Almighty Moonstruck Flores blossom, like, kill everything that opposes me, kill myself if I'm in the way of this ultimate beauty, this ultimate perfection. And then I do definitely touch on, like, what even is this perfection? And does it even exist? A perfect place must be one in which beautiful flowers cry. Like, does this perfection, like, what is this perfection? And it's just something that's so corrupt. And it's a place that can only take place in your mind. And it just can't be a reality. Your perfect place is not somewhere that is feasible. It's not reachable. Actually, the reason why that I introduced another part is because I ran out of stuff to write about. So I invited Donut, who is one of my dear friends, and I wrote a part from Tyranza's perspective. I really like that with Tyranza's part, I got to write something much more emotional and personal. Just, don't leave me behind, you know. Oh, my dearest flower, I gave you everything. Don't leave me behind. That was kind of the sentiment. And I think it's super, like I mentioned before, it's super impactful when you have this lament, this mourning, and it's a duet with this voice that Sectonia's slowly succumbed to about not recognizing anyone, about being insane and only caring about reaching this perfection that really doesn't exist.
So I asked Star a bunch of questions, and he did an audio interview with me, as well as shared some of his thoughts on his contributions this year. So he says, "This year I have not contributed at all. Oops." And I think he's being ironic, I'm not sure. I loved making pieces that were a reflection of the music, like the characters dancing to Grassland or Adeline shredding the guitar. Then there's also episode 9's Tyranza Everything, which I hoped we replicate to some extent with Susie's episode. The secondary piece of hair for Blue Hair Girl is missing, LOL. I think what he's saying is when you look at some of the girls on Passion of the Tridental Mages, they have like different strands of hair that move separately from the rest of their hair, and I don't think that Francesca has that. Is that her name? Did I get it right? Is it Franny? I could barely animate anything of episode 1 without non-stop crashing. I have likely drawn the amazing mirror in Morpho Medley more times than I will ever for the rest of my life. That is definitely true. He drew that damn thing so many times for Translucent Dusk, and also several times for Dark Mirage. He also says to me, I initially just tried to capture whatever your work in progress songs gave a feel for, like the intro for 02, but short lore dump / visualizations felt appropriate, so I went that route instead. There are multiple renders for the 02 remix, as that particular intro touched my soul. So when asked about what goes into planning for a Morpho Medley episode, he says, nothing in particular determines much besides filling out a few checkboxes. I personally experience effort creep and have no intention to stop, as I only want to get better at it. Hopefully I can move on from handling everything on my own to a more directing role, so we can expand the scope of colored animated pieces and let more people feel partaken to the pieces. I also asked Star if he had any other projects he wanted to share or any funny stories, and said, projects that I have left behind, those with storyboards, among others planned. I intend to push to make music videos with a lot of animation, likely with help, like I've wanted to since middle school, lol. Hopefully the talents being harnessed and practiced will reflect on future music projects with Lighto-san. Thanks, Star. So I've got a couple more pieces that I wanted to share with you guys, and I couldn't really find a good place for them in the rest of the video, so I'm just going to share them with you here. So Glitch produced a lot of artwork for my videos. He wrote pieces about the individual artwork that he did for each video, but he also wrote about his general progress as an artist. So this is what he said. It's admittedly hard for me to see how much I've improved over time at times with how anxious I get over my work. I feel like there's an unhealthy strive to improve constantly in my workspace, and I never really feel satisfied with the end result because of it. Oh, I don't relate to that at all. In hindsight, it's incredibly obvious that my works from Kara to Spamton Neo has improved to a capacity. Some areas have definitely excelled, while others I still deserve more time to finally get where I want to be, and I think Neo, while not perfect, is the best representation of what I can do at this point in my art history. I think that is 100% accurate and perfect. From a musical standpoint, similar to my perspective on original concepts from a visual direction, I didn't really know what to expect from Bolt at all. Sometimes it's admittedly easier to envision new takes on old things than it is fleshing out completely original things. It's stuff like that where people like Para and Light shine the brightest and garner all the respect I can give. That's very kind of you. Anyone that can breathe life into something that's never been seen before is admirable, honestly. Visually, as many likely know, I didn't contribute and I didn't know what to expect either. I'm glad Para and Crazed Doodler did her Majora justice where I could not. Thanks, Glitch, that definitely means a lot to us. So I asked Glitch about poses that he did for some of his art and how he comes up with the poses, and he said, poses have always been a you've hit a roadblock, scrap it and cope type of thing. Ain't that a mood? Where the original pose idea gets canned because of anxiety. Mew Mew, Megalo Strike Back, even Spamton's special deals suffered from these complications. A lot of poses go in, but very little ever come out. Shading is just random. It's definitely one of the elements of art I wish I had a better understanding of. Nothing about these, at least with me, comes naturally or quickly. It sucks the fun out of my passion for art at times. What I do for that to not be the case. So I have so much stuff that I want to share with you guys before we get going. One of the things I wanted to show was Star actually, around Christmas time, got a bunch of stuff for me and TNH and couple other people, I think, that he sent as gifts, and I just wanted to share those with you because they're really sweet. So this is what he made me. He made these 3, I believe they're Christmas ornaments that you can hang on a tree. So that's me on a shadow star. That's my little Kirby. You've seen my profile picture. And then he has the Morpho Medley kind of logo, I guess, with my logo on it as well, and it looks fucking awesome. He also has one of Star Station, which is the Discord that we use. That's basically just a Discord for content creators of the Kirby series, and it's pretty awesome. We have a lot of fun there. He also made 2 sketches of me, actually me, like the human version of me. And this is the first one. It's got me with a keytar, and it's the fucking coolest thing ever. I love this so much. Oh my god. Oh man. And it's got, you know, the little characters from the Morpho Medley. You can see Dark Meta Knight, Gooey, Adeline with a guitar, and Tyranza. Oh, it's just so good. Oh my god. And then he's got, that's probably as close as you're gonna get to a face reveal of actual me right there. And he just has me saying, I make Kirby remixes. So fucking based. So thanks so much. I just thought that was the sweetest thing in the world, and I thought you guys might appreciate seeing that as well. I really wanted to touch on your sprite art.
I'm still
Yeah, go ahead.
like last year, I'm still mostly just experimenting when I do stuff. Like I don't really like do anything set in stone. I'm just like, okay, I have something in mind, and then I just kind of open just the program I use, and then I just work on it and see if I can just make something with it. And you know, it's led to some good stuff. Like Molgera was simple because a lot of the sprites were just ripped from Link to the Past and the Spiders resource. The Molgeras were original, and you know, they look nice, they look fine. But the mirrors for Dark Mirage and Translucent Dusk, where they look fine, they look good, but I do think that some of the editing kind of messed up on so in Dark Mirage specifically. You can see kind of the seams, but it doesn't really matter. Overall, the best thing probably that I did was definitely Gooey and Zero and Hyperzone. Like, I love that piece. Like, even now, it looks amazing to me. One of the things I liked for Crown Supreme Overlord is that I remember, like, way back, I suggested kind of how a structure for Crown Supreme Overlord would go, and it was basically structured after one of my favorite songs from Kingdom Hearts called Darkness of the Unknown. But I remember the structure going like, it starts out like as a version of Crown that doesn't sound quite like Crown, kind of like messy, not fully there, and then it goes on to like full, like actual Crown. And that kind of came to be because you did 2 Crown intros in fucking Crowning Supreme. Translucent Dusk was probably my favorite of this year, followed probably by Spamton. Awesome. Specifically, the Snowy Descent. The Snowy Descent is fucking amazing.
Well, thanks, man.
I think that's your best non-Kirby work this year, in my opinion. I mean, I'm planning on doing stuff with, you know, these guys in Nightmare, and, you know, I might be making some stuff for, like, the very end of Morpho Medley, if, you know, maybe suggest a few things here and there. But other than that, it's just gonna be, like, more side jobs, probably an SNES remixes, exclusive preview for the peeps at home. The end of days is coming, you know, so dawn of the first day, 72 hours left, so, you know, if you know what I'm referencing.
Yeah, for sure. I personally would want you to talk a little bit about how you came up with some of the scenes, like the shot with Tyranza in Translucent Dusk where he's looking into the lake.
Oh, I don't know if you remember me mentioning I had to put myself in a place mentally just to try to figure out what would be suitable.
But you came up with a lot of that stuff before we even had the music for it.
That's right. That's because the concepts of it, like what could be done, were figured pretty early on. Like just by knowing that we would have a Morpho Medley Tyranza episode, I could already have all sorts of ideas as to how we want to, what direction I'd take visuals.
I love your artistic storytelling and stuff like Passion of the Tridental Mages and stuff like that. The Morpho Medley was your idea to begin with. Has, you know, your view of the Morpho Medley changed from when we first came up with the idea to like Translucent Dusk and what you have planned for like the last video?
Well, what we have in Translucent Dusk is what I wanted from the start, but how I meant to allocate my time and how much I was willing to invest in like what the risk is, or at least that's how it felt. I don't know, I just have an effort creep with anything I make. So, and I already knew where I would want to make, where I want to aim since forever, so slowly but surely as I help you out with videos and other people or whatever it be, I would just keep letting that creep take over, and that's how you get the Morpho Medley just increasing in complexity.
I think that's a perfect way to put it, because when I'm going back through these videos, it's like the first Morpho Medley track has like what, 10 or 15 art pieces, and then Translucent Dusk has like 100 and something. Crowning of the Supreme King is just ridiculous. It has like 90 something pieces.
Well, Translucent Dusk actually has over 200. I think me and Newell were counting, and he asked me, and I'm like, if we include every individual frame of animation, shy of 300 or more drawings.
Shit.
Yeah. This is an idea I've had even before we started, give or take, but the pinnacles of storytelling to me were always going to be Tyranza and Susie's stories. Now, I kind of wish we had a little more context as to where things would go, because I would definitely want to go back and expand upon the animation of every video. But I think it's just best to look forward to the cooler things as time progresses. We all get better, anyways, right?
So thank you, Star. Appreciate
Well, I don't get you say that thing back on.
You can say whatever you want.
I just want merch from Light.
Oh man.
I don't know if Light is willing to talk about it. You don't have to add this to the video. I've kind of been nagging him that he should probably just monetize these videos, because I think it's just a waste of creative effort, just to a degree. And I kind of nagged you a few times. I don't know if that is the right word. Turn off your ad block when you're watching Light MetaS.
Awesome. You capitalized on like the most extreme aspects of the character. I remember when we were doing Marx, you specifically were trying to make it as creepy as possible, and you were doing like the attacks and stuff like that.
It actually coincides a bit with how you compose the piece.
Ultimate.
It's insane.
Ultimate must be a dick. But you're aware this is a recording session.
Remember when I said that me and you should mute? Yeah. Remember when I fucking told that to you? To say that directly fucking to you? Yeah. All right.
So that last bit was just a blooper between me and Star and Ultimate, who we asked to mute, but he had a couple things to say. So it was really funny, but I was glad to have him there on the voice call because he's a really cool dude. But anyway, that's it. 3 hours of content. And I'm sorry if it seems a little bit conceited and really long. It was not my intention. It just kind of happened this way. I have all kinds of things planned. As usual, it's extremely messy, but what I'm gonna do soon is release the Kirby's Adventure medley. That's probably gonna end up airing on YouTube after Kirby's anniversary. Unfortunately, it's just not realistic for me to get it done in time for that. But what I will probably do is I'll release the audio for it, so you'll have access to the music. I'll upload it on SoundCloud, and it's going to be really, really long. It's going to be probably around a half hour of music. So I hope you guys like that a lot. and I'm still, you know, I'm trying my best to get a grapple on my schedule, but it's just something I've struggled with for years, so I sincerely apologize for that. And of course, there's the elephant in the room. Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I've said it wrong about 100,000 times, but I'm actually in the process of playing through it right now. I'm not really trying to rush into it or anything like that, but I'm really impressed with it so far. And there's already multiple songs that I'm like, oh my god, this would make such a good remix. And, you know, not even boss themes. I'm not even that far into the game yet, but it's going to be a while before I think we do any remixes from Forgotten Lands. But to be honest, when we do, we are going to have big plans for it. So just keep that in mind. I've actually talked a little bit with TNH. We might potentially do something in the distant future, but I ask for your patience and just trust that when we do finally touch on everything that we want to touch on from Forgotten Land, that we'll do a really good job. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate each and every one of you, and it's amazing how, you know, kind the community has been to me. So I just want to show my appreciation, and I'll see you guys real soon.